Credit to Rogue. Like I do think their coaches did extremely well.
Mega credit. They beat the coaching staff of the split. They beat four of the best players in the region. And you know what? The mid laner for Rogue isn't even an all LEC player, boys. It's just some lad that you got off the street or something like. Right. We're here for another episode of Summoning Insight. That's right. It's me, the irrelevant guy who never gets any interviews with anyone. Definitely, by the way, if you're from CSGO and you're thinking, that's about CSGO, mate, why bring it up when you're League of Legends? Well, you know what then? You haters are right in League. I definitely won't be dropping any interviews this week with people you tell me I'll never be getting interviews with. That would never happen. Ooh. Anyway, if there were indeed to be those interviews, though, they wouldn't be on this channel. They'd be on my channel. On this channel, we are sponsored by Esports Bet, which is, of course, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They still have if you've never done it before, it's the first time deposit bonus, which is a 50% bonus up to $200. Also, we have a new one actually on this particular one, which is alternative though. This is the key thing. If you haven't done the first time deposit, you can take this one instead, which is basically, like I'll have to double check, but I think it's just something like the first $100, even if you lose it, you get it back or something. I think it's something like that.
So what it is if you guys place a prediction, you can get up to 100 USDT back if you lose.
So, this is if you're a first-time user. So if you've never tried it so far, there's an easy chance to give it a go, isn't it? You can't lose.
All you got to do is message the mods. You can either message them on the website, esports.io itself, or you can go into their Discord and message the mods there, and they will just give it back to you. So you get a penalty-free prediction up to 100 USDT. Now, we could have used that this week, with Excel and EG. But you know what? We still came out huge because I put 10,000 USDT onto Gen.G, and that ended up being great. So we still did very well this week, even though we could have done better.
Oh, we'll definitely get into some of those. Like, here's the thing I thought we'd start out with just to make it lighthearted. Right, I will say there's a lot of things around League and esports that I actually cannot just get invested in. I can't emit that much energy to care. So I'll give you an example, Monty. When I think of all the problems Worlds has, like terrible fucking bracket format, ridiculous seeding system, absurd slot allocation, like a super archaic format, and yet it lasts like a month and a half. Like all these problems that it has, major region statuses are off. There's so many major fundamental structural things I would change. I can't really put to the top of the list like what the trophy looks like. Like the trophy could be a generic trophy, it could be a Rice Krispie for all I care. But with that said, they did obviously just show what the new trophy is. And since everyone else is the opposite to me, and they're all about the song and the theme and what country, everyone else cares, right? So all I'll say is this. This actually looks like Riot is intentionally trying to play into that meme of like, but we have X at home. Because it's like their old trophy was actually, by the way, one of the better esports trophies. It was a pretty big
old trophy, but whatever.
No, because here's the thing. What made that good is it was totally unique. You could tell that the second you saw it. It also had another unique quality, which is they intentionally made it really heavy so the whole team has to lift it. That's quite interesting. By the way, if you don't know, in Counter-Strike, we have some really bad trophies, mate. You should go back and look at some of the old like ECS and EPL trophies. Some of them are terrible, mate. Some of them are just like, it looks like you've just won an award for like podcaster of the year. It'll just be like a little square like thing like that. Like, what the hell is this? Like a see-through thing like you win for like and manager of the year. Like, so anyway, like it does look, the old one at least had like an iconic look. This one looks like someone genuinely was just like, I want it like that, but save like 90% of the money. Like it just looks bad in general. So whatever, it's whatever on that. Like
I care about trophies in general. I mean, if you guys missed it, the Flashpoint trophy that Thorin and I actually worked on was like a chrome plated AK-47. It was super cool. You could like pick it up and hold it like a real gun. So I actually really care about trophies. I do think that I agree, Thorin, that the old trophy was iconic, but I'll give you guys some details that you may not know, insider information about that trophy. So it was ugly. It was very gamery with these like tacky giant blue crystals. It also hilariously, I mean, everything about the old trophy is fucking hilarious, right? It's called the Summoner's Cup. They retconned summoners out of the game, so now it just has no meaning. Because if you guys are new to League of Legends,
I always forget that was one of my original rants, wasn't it? It was actually, Monty. My original rant, basically was, if you don't know, in League of Legends, they don't just have the lore of, like all the different cities and the different characters and their. It's worse than that. The original law was that you aren't you, a human at home. You actually summon into the realm, and then you could choose your champion. And it's some sort of fucked up, like, it was almost like trying to like anticipate VR or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. So what it was, if you guys don't know, is the original lore was absolutely terrible and actually just ruined League of Legends storylines forever because they couldn't really ever escape from this. So the concept is that you, the player, are a wizard, hence summoner spells. Those are your spells that you're using, so you can apply them to any character. And you are like being John Malkovich, like inside the character, using them as a meat puppet to decide. And Summoner's Rift
you
was
basically
like
possess Nidalee or whatever, exactly.
Which, by the way, if I possess some people, I definitely wouldn't be like choosing to fight with them first. I'm just gonna say that, put that out there. Anyway, so when you go into Summoner's Rift, it's supposed to be like a proxy war to settle conflicts, so there weren't real wars. But then they realized that if you create characters, that were just being possessed by anonymous people, that these characters couldn't actually have their own character or agency to them, so that they couldn't actually function as fictional characters because of obvious reasons. So they had to retcon summoners out of the game. But those hooded guys in the original like cinematics, they're all these like wizards in hoods that you can't see the faces of because they're supposed to be you, the player. And so they put that on the cup. So obviously, like, that's bad at this point in time because it was such a huge part of it. So anyway, it looks like really wizardy and tacky, and like I wasn't a huge fan of it. It did have kind of an iconic shape and look to it, which they now changed. I'm not saying got rid of because it definitely has a look now. I just don't know.
They tried to keep some of that, you could tell, but like they didn't even do that good a job with it.
So part of the old problem with this Summoner's Cup, by the way, is the original one, which was made by some silversmith, I think, in England. There's a really actually very cool video that Riot made many years ago showing how they did that. And I love the craftsmanship that they put into it. So I always this was actually one of my all-time favorite Riot videos. But anyway, one of the problems is that it weighed a fuck ton. It weighed like 50 pounds.
Like I say, if you watch when they pick up like either TPL or SKT, you should see that they have to pick it with the whole team. It's really heavy, isn't it?
So 50 pounds is not that heavy if you're not a pro gamer, but if you're a pro
These people have weak wrists, Monty. Exactly. They're not drinking a lot of milk and all that shit.
So if you're a pro gamer with wrist issues, then 50 pounds is really heavy. So they were afraid actually that it would like crush pro gamers.
I bet it could have, yeah.
It could have actually done some real
tripped
damage.
over or something. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So actually, what you guys probably may not know is that they created a second Summoner's Cup, which was lighter, like a hollow version of it.
Right.
And I think it was smaller as well. So the original Summoner's Cup was not actually the one that you saw most of the time, or it wasn't the one they lifted. Like they would have several, and it was at least two. They may have had more. And they would use one for like the shoots, because at Worlds they always like put the Summoner's Cup in the middle of a street and like do the long exposure, so you see all the cars zooming by really fast and you get all that stuff. So they would use one for that. I think the original one they would cart around and use for that, and then the second one would be in the stadium. So there was a problem that they addressed, and they obviously tried to do it by like making it more hollow and making the cup shape out of the handles on this one. And I do like the concept of it having 5 sides and having one handle for each position to lift, I think is actually pretty cool. It's just the execution that they really missed on. Like, it looks kind of like flying buttresses on a Gothic cathedral, but just like minimalistic. And it doesn't have a lot of character to it. It's like what they did to the LCK logo. They took a good logo and then they just made it super minimal and like sort of like a bird. So it just looks boring to me. And not only that, but if you're gonna, what's confusing to me is if you're gonna have the 5 sides and etch people's name into the trophy, which is great, obviously, why would you do it by team instead of having one side dedicated to each position? Like you have the jungle side, and so it's like you have the mid side, and it's like 2013 Faker, and then you have all of these 2014 Pawn, et cetera, et cetera. So you have every winner, and then you could put the MVP next to the MVP on that player's side. So if you're going to have the 5 sides for the 5 positions and have the logo of each position on one of the handles, why is the team together instead of just having it by position? So just very strange decisions that were made here. But ultimately, like, I didn't like the last cup very much. Don't like this one either. Just seems like a missed opportunity and a good concept that was really kind of poorly executed. And I say this as somebody who thinks there are cool trophies in LoL. I think the new LCK Cup is fucking sick. It's way better than any of the trophies we had when I was working there with OGN. I think that one looks awesome. So I even think that Tiffany, who did the LPL Cup, is more gamery. And it's, again, Riot not
it's
really...
wild though, dude. Here's what people don't know. Because obviously, remember, G2 won it, so you all know in your mind what it looks like. Dude, that MSI trophy G2 looked baller. It was like the NBA championship, the one with like a circuit.
Yeah,
that looked fucking fire. The joke is that looked better than the World's one because it was like all golden and everything.
The LEC trophy is like the cool crown logo. Like, that one's fine. That's pretty good.
A good one.
So, like, I don't really understand it. And again, it's like League of Legends is a game that is all about being over the top. It's about having pool party skins and taking every single IP in the universe and ripping it off and putting it into your game. Like, any generic fantasy or sci-fi IP is ripped off and put into League of Legends. It's a game of visual excess, right? It's not a game of minimalism. There's nothing minimal about this. If you want minimalism, fuck off into Valorant, where all the maps are super stripped down and everything is kind of blocky and minimalistic. League of Legends shouldn't have a minimalistic cup. That's not the entire purpose of it. As much as I dislike the old Summoners Cup, it was on brand with the gaudiness, at the very least. Like, the LPL trophy is quite gaudy, but I think it works for LoL. So it just doesn't seem to fit into anything else that they're doing, and it doesn't really seem to be a good representation of the game.
Right, being as you did touch on the fact that we had some unfortunate results coming this week, should we touch on a few of those? Because obviously we're going to have our guest on later. Now, our guest
the West is
Jensen
Goh, by the way.
If you didn't see, he was the person who was on the last Best Damn League show, which is on the same channel here. And obviously, he's been on Summoning Insight in the past. But I would say, actually, like I have, one of the Best Damn League show. I think he's sort of hit a new trend of like his lens that he's looking at. It's going to be very interesting. But that'll be later. That'll be mainly about like LPL, etc. So let's get into some of these discussions, shall we? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Listen, it wasn't a great series, but the XL Fnatic one was certainly an exciting series. Let's put it that way. Because here's the problem, Monty. Genuinely, if people go watch the Best Damn League show, this is basically what my prediction was and why my prediction was like this. My prediction was this, Monty. My head tells me, of course, XL should win it. In fact, they should probably even 3-0. But I bet that triggers the fuck out of anyone watching the game, by the way. They should probably even just 3-0 and win easily because they have an identity. They know how to play the game. But you know what, Monty? In the end, I had to do... Funny, I felt like I was in CSGO 6 years ago. I used to have to do the same thing with the classic Fnatic team there. It was like, I don't know how. They actually shouldn't win, but somehow Fnatic probably just uses star power to win or has more experienced players. And I even told my Discord dude when Game 4 finished, people can confirm this. I just wrote in my Discord, like, right now XL's just going to lose Game 5. Like, if they choke that away, there's no way they're winning a Game 5 after that. Because the problem with this one, dude, this reminded me of last year's spring finals, that one with Rogue, where Rogue could have won 3-0. But the second they didn't win 3-0, you just knew they were fucked. Because the problem XL had, you could clearly see, was when they did just play a normal game of League of Legends, they were the superior team. They were fucking out-positioning them all the time. They looked great. They seemed like they knew what they were doing in the draft. But this is the problem. This is why playoff League of Legends is just real League of Legends, guys. Like, until you have that factor of a bit of pressure behind you, you are just playing normal game, aren't you? You're not playing the real game, because this is the reason why no one gave up completely on Fnatic. It's the reason why I said, by the way, when they just snuck in the playoffs, so many teams in the playoffs probably went, oh, bloody hell. Like, why have they just gotten through? Like, we could have had them out. That could have been like Vitality and everyone would beat them. Like, in this scenario, like, this is why you can't fuck around with a lineup like Fnatic's, mate. You can't give them... I always say this, Monty. If you're the underdog, you cannot sort of almost like showboat, give them breathing. You have to just crush them when you get your chance. And they had it here. Dude, this is the worst one I've ever seen. Because the one you're talking about in the past that you always reference with Rogue, yeah, that was bad. Like, they could have won that. But that was like, they still lost. This was like you genuinely just made... By the way, a very non-XL decision. The normal XL decision would be you take the Elder and you just use your advantage and win. It looked here like they rushed it, and they were so greedy to finish that third game. They actually genuinely blew the whole series. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think it was definitely tilt-inducing. This should have been a 3-0 for XL. It's also like they had every single tool to be able to win this game. Sure. Like, there were so many... I don't know where to start. Like, okay, so let's do this. They win their tiebreaker game versus Vitality by playing like a very all-in, risky, like TF Draven composition. So they're willing to take these risks and play more aggressively in the early game, and they have versatility. So I would have thought that XL getting Yuumi in 4 of 4 of these 5 games and playing into Lucian Nami, they should be able to very patiently sit back and play front-to-back team fighting compositions. When you're in your last game and you have Ornn, Sejuani, Ahri, Sivir, Yuumi, just play it out slow. Play front to back. These are the easiest team compositions to play in League of Legends. You have Ornn Sejuani, you have 2 forms of conditional engage where you can throw out the Ornn ult or you can throw out the Sejuani ult. You even have kind of a form of conditional engage in Ahri as well, because she can ult in and charm, and then if you miss the charm, you ult back out, right? So there's a lot of opportunities here in order to find the right engage that you want to set up properly to have these advantages. And they just like threw repeatedly, and a lot of this honestly was like individual mistakes. And while I think that we know that Excel's individual players, like, they are more than the sum of their parts, it's rare to see all of these players playing really badly in terms of missing abilities, missing skill shots. It seemed like nerves kind of took over the later that this series went on. Because I think that these were really comfortable comps for them. They weren't particularly demanding when it came to early game execution, even though, again, when their backs were against the wall versus Vitality even make it into playoffs, they took the risk. They rolled the dice on the early game comp, and they played it really well. So this is just really disappointing for Excel. If anything, this was pretty easy to execute in my mind in most of these compositions. Fnatic was just doubling down, tripling down on the Lucian Nami, which I wouldn't. That's not a strategy I would have used.
Dude, I have to say, I've been hinting at it the last few episodes, right? Without knowing behind the scenes. I haven't asked anyone who's expert. Maybe Jensen knows later. Dude, I genuinely think that bot lane for Westerners, I've seen the LPL be amazing, Monty. That bot lane, if you are a Westerner or not the Gen.G bot lane, don't draft it. It just loses. The Lucian Nami is not as easy as you fucking think to execute. Almost every team in the West that picks it loses the game, mate. They all think it. Here's the thing. When I look at it, it must just be tearing up scrims. It looks like it just must win out all the time in scrims. Because you notice, the joke is, people now, Monty, even prioritize that sometimes over the Yuumi and other stuff.
Yeah, I think it depends on the team, right? I think that the burden of execution is always going to be on the Lucian Nami team, and so it telegraphs a lot. And I think that also it depends very much on the quality of your Lucian player in order to get some chip damage down, either with the culling or by like quickly dashing in with your ability. Once you have rapid fire cannon up to do some chip damage on the front line, like, it can be very oppressive. But the issue is that the burden of execution is always with the Lucian Nami team. And also, you have to play very carefully as a team around Lucian's cooldowns, whether it's like Flash or Gale Force, in order to protect him, because he can do a lot of damage, but that range is relatively short, right? You don't have the luxury of playing a Zeri where you can sit back and just, poke with crits excessively, or with a Sivir where you can pop your ult and just reposition your entire team extremely quickly. And once you get a few ricochets going in the enemy team, you can fight very efficiently in front to back team fights, because you can hit the back line from range, basically, right? You can just attack the front line. Harder to do that with Lucian efficiently and still be able to get value out of the back line. So this is all to say that I don't think most Western teams have shown that they are proficient when it comes to executing this reliably. It's not a risk I would take, especially when options like Zeri and Sivir just
You can handshake. Yeah, you can just handshake and take both good bot lanes, can't you? You can do it exactly. Plenty of people did in the other regions. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, Lucian is very good. There are extremely good Lucian players in the world, but it really shapes the way that you play as a team, and you have to execute on it. So I just wouldn't put that pressure on most Western rosters at this point in time, because frankly, like, outside of G2, the West looks terrible.
Here's one reason why I want to get into this, because actually this XL series, I think another fundamental thing they did wrong. Look, the best illustration is refusing to take the Elder and try to take the base. But in general, dude, if you watch that series, they were just giving up dragons that were free to take. Right? Am I missing something? Why not take the free stats? Remember, it's not gold, guys. It gives you permanent fucking stats. Why not just take the stat? Like, why would you not? If you think I can already end the game, then the Elder's going to make it even easier, isn't it? What are you doing? Like, that's the part don't get, because I see these teams giving up when they're not getting anything for it, you know. It's like, if it's free, take it, mate. You always take a free one, of course. This series drove me wild, mate. I mean, it's true, partly because even though I told people on shows that Fnatic would win, obviously those fucking 2.2 odds were too juicy, weren't they? So when it got to game 5, I was like, bloody hell, we've lost all the money again, haven't we?
I mean, it really is just shocking, honestly, Thorin, because the entire West, both LEC and LCS, is just terrible. Like you sit there and you watch teams like Gen.G play the game, or you watch teams like JDG, or I would say to a slightly lesser degree, Top Esports. But these are teams that the level of play is just so much higher than the West right now, both on an individual level as well as objective setups, the way that they're properly playing out their team compositions. You know, the Top Esports JDG absolute banger series from this last week is something we'll talk about with Jensen. It was an extremely good series. Where both teams were like, okay, you know, this is our timing. This player doesn't have flash. This is how we need to execute this team fight. And the other team was like, they were both exploiting each other's weaknesses really beautifully. And we just don't see that. Like, LCS has turned into a region where I guess you just pick Seraphine or Zillion and win for no fucking reason, which is just...
The way they kept drawing that as well. I thought that was like, here's the thing, Monty, because I made the mistake of watching mainly other regions this year. When I was watching that series, I was like, this is a weird pick. Why are they doing that? And then I looked at, this is their whole strategy. They're going to be going back to this thing. And it wins.
It wins every time, dude.
It wins every game. So that's the craziest part, dude. Like,
getting banned in LCS, like Seraphine's getting banned. Like,
I can't. I wish Worlds could start tomorrow, dude. It'd be so good, wouldn't it? I know.
I mean, you try this shit against, like, you try and play that Seraphine against an LPL team in bot lane, and you see what happens to you as they tell you to bite the pillow and just bang you under the turret 24/7. It's baffling. It's baffling. Like, you just get a free pass through laning phase in the early game into mega scaling. And then once you're there, instead of flanking from multiple angles, like many good teams will do, like good team fighting teams in the current meta in Asia will come at you from like 3 directions at once. And what the fuck is Seraphine going to do in that case? She's going to get bopped in the back line, and you're going to hit one person with your ult. And that's going to be it. Like, it's not going to work. And the fact that it just wins every game in NA is baffling. And then you look at EU, and like, thank God G2 at least had a pop-off series, and Caps like was extremely dominant because they look like they actually might be able to do something at Worlds. But Rogue and Mad Lions was just, dear Lord, that was another series that was infuriating to watch.
Even if you won that as Rogue, I hope you did not celebrate that fucking win. Like, you did. They gave you that win, mate. Like, they gave you a million chances of that one. Yeah.
I mean, here's a great example for you, Thor. Yeah. So game 1 with Rogue, they had the exact same composition that Gen.G had in game 3 versus T1, except they had a different jungler. They had Jin Zhao because there were 4 jungle bans against Peanut in that game. And Malrong obviously likes Jarvan, and whatever. It's fine. It's a good early game jungler. But this is like the Exodia comp. If you have Renekton, Sylas, Zeri, Yuumi, you are doing fantastically, because you basically relieve all the pressure bot side by having this Renekton and Sylas, right? And the Renekton is constantly going to be dominating the top side, playing aggressively, taking these plays, zoning out the Ornn. The enemy jungler has to go up there and deal with this shit. And your Zeri and Yuumi just basically get to scale for free. And then you hit the late game. They play this comp horribly in this game. Odo Omne's weighed down. They can't get any advantages. This composition from Rogue is exactly what you want in this meta. And they just completely fumble the ball. So as soon as I see this, I'm like, wow, Mad Lions just let them have this. Holy shit. But I guess you just lose with it. Like, it's
in general in this series, Monty, Mad Lions coaching staff had a very different perspective of what the draft was than I think a lot of other people. I think they came in thinking they had their own internal meta or something, right?
Look, I guess, like, I can only suppose, right? But I felt like over the course of this series, Rogue's drafting was more or less on point, except for, like, God knows why they decided to play Jarvan or Jin Yuumi. Jin Yuumi Trundle. It's like they were trying to run back Dom1's Game 5 loss in the World Finals last year, where this comp just doesn't work, guys. Like, it's actually fucking shit. And playing Jhin in this meta, I looked it up. It's the only Jhin game on this patch or the last patch in the entire world in major regions. Why you pick this is completely and totally baffling to me. I guess they thought they could run some sort of long range pick composition and like maybe the Trundle ganks early would happen and you can set up a Jhin W, but there really is no useful target for Yuumi in the late game to attach to. But the rest of the series, I thought in general, like Rogue's compositions kind of made sense. I even liked the Caitlyn Lux in the last game.
I was going to say, I actually thought game 5. Here's the difference. I think both coaching staff, by the way, are really good. I think Rogue and Mad Lions have earned their fucking pay these last few years and all the different lineups. Look at the work they've done. But here's the difference. Mad Lions, look, Monty, like this is a draft you do, just like you're just solving a problem. You're just testing something out. This would be a good answer. The problem is that's not the draft I do in game 5 with like a rookie ADC. Put him on the fucking Lucian army and go win the series in your first ever time. Meanwhile, what's great, this is what I love about the other side, Monty. It's not that Rogue are rookies, but they are people who get very nervous clearly in big game scenarios like game 5. So what they've done on the Rogue side is they aren't even power picks, dude. Those aren't the strongest champions in the role, but they are all comfort. Every single one of those, that player likes that champion, has played it a whole bunch. With it. Even if you don't know the locks, that is a Trimby champion. Like, dude, that was a great job because as you saw, they knew how to execute that. They actually knew what to do with it.
And I think, like, yes, you know what Rogue's going to do, right? Like, it's a very clear-cut composition where the win conditions are clear, and that can be both an advantage and a disadvantage. It's an advantage to the team that is operating the composition because they know very, very clearly what they have to do, right? Unfortunately, your enemy knows that too. And the reason why we don't see a lot of Caitlyn Lux played is because it pushes 24/7, and so it requires a lot of jungle attention in order to stay safe. And if you fall behind, it can be weak. Also, Caitlyn has like a power trough at 2 items, and she only gets a little bit stronger later in the game. But if you're playing into Illusion, it's not the biggest deal.
Also, remember this. This was the order. This is why I did feel a little bit bad for Mad Lions. Because, like you're saying, think about what you're talking about with the Caitlyn. Good news, Monty. The whole reason why everyone had to play 2v3 in Forgiven's teams is because he was always pushing the lane on Caitlyn. Well, good news, right? We've got Wukong. That's an amazing champion to go in behind and gank. Unless we fail the top dive at the very beginning of the game and put not only the Wukong behind, but their fucking jungler ahead. Like, mate, right. If I was that bot lane, I'd be so malded already. Yeah, like, it's just, the game's just begun.
Yeah, it was disastrous too, because you want the Renekton to be like kind of self-sufficient on the top side, creating pressure so that you can gank bot lane that's pushing, and their jungler has to make a hard decision about where they go on the map, right? Well, don't have to make that decision anymore. Also, Trimby played a fucking great game.
He did a great job,
yeah. Great game, gotta be said.
Some of the poke he was doing on that Lux, you just couldn't even come near the objectives he wanted to. He'd just take 3/4 of your health.
I mean, the issue with Rogue's comp is like, yeah, it looks close in terms of kills, you know, like 20 kills to 16 kills. The problem is Mad Lions has 3 melee champs, a Lucian, who's relatively short range, right? Outside of the first shot he gets on rapid fire cannon, and a Nami. And you're playing into Orianna Lux Caitlyn, and like that Orianna ball is going to be a choke. Caitlyn traps are going to be in a choke. You're going to be hitting from, you know, they're going to be hitting you from a million miles away. And also you have AP Lux and Orianna shields on your composition with a limited damage composition when it comes to poking up front. So they can actually just walk up to you, poke you, take a little bit of trade damage, except they don't actually take damage. So Rogue's composition was really good into what Mad Lions brought. And I agree, like, is this a composition that I think is the most versatile, or it's the best, or it doesn't have serious flaws? No. But if you can operate it properly and you can kind of survive the late game push, well, you're going to be in a really big advantage when it comes to range and choke control in the late game. And Rogue executed it well. So I think they deserve to win this series. That was probably their best game. But I do get concerned when I see a region or a team going back to these styles of compositions where they are unable to win on like the God comp in the meta. Like that fucks my head a lot. That if you can't win with Renekton, Sylas, Zeri, Yuumi, that's real bad. Because the thing about this composition is it's just so forgiving as well. You almost never lose your opportunity to win a game, no matter how far behind you are with this comp. Like, it's still possible if you play.
That's why it's a great game 5 draft as well.
So yeah, and also, I mean,
By the way, in
there's
this
so much
particular match, right? Obviously, people don't know Monty and Rich were doing the watch party, and actually, even though I'd done a CS:GO watch party earlier and I was wrecked, cause it went to game 5, I said like I have to jump in on this. It's like the razor cake match, isn't it? So I came in, and obviously Rogue won. But what's hilarious is when I came in, I did like a little rant about Armor, but they all tried to counter me. You're like, no, it's been all right now. And what's great is it's almost like the summoners were back, Monty, and I summoned Armor because I made him play like exactly the sort of person. That game is why I hate this guy. Look, I don't hate him as a person. He's actually got a great personality, but as a player, he tilts the shit out of me, mate. And that's why, like, that game, the joke is, it's like LS paid him. He just made Renekton look like the shittest champion ever. It was just him walking. Dude, he was like playing World of Warcraft. He was roaming around the map all the time on his own. Like, what is he doing? Like, what are you doing, bro? And also, yeah, like you said, you can't ever get close to their team. That's the worst part, isn't it? Like, if you're behind, like, unfortunately they were, like I said, because of the beginning open dive, like, you can never get onto them, can you? They're a million miles away, just poking you off. Like, it's a nightmare.
I mean, you can't clear traps either. Caitlyn traps, like it's absolutely disastrous, right? So credit to Rogue. Like I do think their coaches did extremely well.
Mega credit. They beat the coaching staff of the split. They beat four of the best players in the whole region. And you know what? The mid laner for Rogue isn't even an all LEC player, boys. It's just some lad that you got off the street or something. Like, fuck, this is like the Miracle on Ice or something, isn't it? Fuck off. I fucking hate those awards. You're ruining everything, you fucking... But anyway, here's the thing. Do you want to flip over and talk a little bit about LCS? Because here's the thing.
Let's talk about G2 first.
Like, we'll do the G2 Misfits.
Yeah, I think it is really... It's important to talk about G2 because they are actually looking like the only legitimate Western team right now.
They're also the only one, if you notice, that has some skills, like enough skills, but also some balls. That they actually look at it and make decisive players money. All these other series we're describing, by the way, were like scared little kids just waiting for the other team to lose the game, looking lost. Like, G2 actually looks like they know how they want to win the game.
They're also on meta, which I think is very important. Like, they're showing
some of their bot lane drafting was very interesting. Yeah.
They're showing interesting adaptations. Like we did actually see in game 1 the Yasuo Senna come out, and like
that was they forced the Senna ban because of that, mate. It worked.
Like and that's something that we've seen from like Damonkia was running that in the playoffs. Like they're a little bit of everything right now, which I find
they actually said themselves in the interview afterwards that no one else runs that. Apparently, no one else runs the Yasuo Senna, so that's already like a card in your back pocket. You saw it worked here.
T1 ran it in the regular split early on, and then Damonkia ran it in playoffs. And also the thing about that you have to understand is that it was running Yasuo Senna is a key setup. And this is what Damonkia did versus T1 in the semifinals of LCK, was that they actually hid that pick. And what it does is it sets up solo lane Yasuos as well, which is what we saw from Damonkia in that wacky game where they went as Zero top and played Heimerdinger in the bot lane, because it's a flex pick. So if you show it early on, and especially if you can win with it, it becomes even more annoying over the course of a best of 5, because you know they can play it again. And you also know that it doesn't necessarily have to be down there in the bot lane. And that was like a key part of Damonkia's best of 5 draft strategy, was that they were successfully able to hide it when they were on red side and then surprise people with the Heimerdinger. Now they didn't win, but that was the player's fault, not the coach's fault. The draft was pretty good. Anyway, so that I thought it was interesting because it was exactly the same thing that Damwon did, which is that they pulled out the Senna Yasuo in game 1 and then like kind of ran it back secretly and hid strats in game 5. So I was excited to see that. It showed they're kind of paying attention to different tricks that are being pulled around the world right now. I mean, they tried after they were up 1-0 for basically going for an early game pick composition. They fell behind early. Like, it's kind of whatever. So I don't read too much into that. Like, you know, you're trying to play Lucian Nami with TF and Vi. Like, if you're not ahead early, that's just going to go badly.
Also, shout out for banning Yubi all 5 games. Job done. What do you know? All of a sudden, Mercer has to play the game now.
That's what I said. That's what I said. Because like when Fnatic and Misfits played in the tiebreaker, I was like, why the fuck did Fnatic let Misfits? Like, the Misfits win condition is just Yuumi. Like, it's Yuumi. It's been Yuumi all year. Just don't let him have it. Like, fuck off Yuumi out of this game. Don't first pick it yourself. Don't play it. Just get rid of it. It's fine. And then G2 also, you know, we've seen some mid Renekton as a flex, which is very interesting. We've seen it from Doinby. We saw it from Faker in the finals. Now, we can argue how successful it's been. It was very successful here, and the theory behind it is good. It's an interesting Silas counter a lot of the times, especially if you're on red side. You can choose where the Renekton goes very late in the draft. Ended up being super helpful for them in this game. So there are things that I like about G2. It's clear that they're paying attention to what's strong in other regions. It's clear that even with different players, it feels like they're returning to the old version of G2, the famous version, the good version.
Oh, they're all about the mid game. This one, yeah, for sure.
Well, it's like the mid game. It's having flexibility in picks. Like they look they're kind of like Dom one right now. Honestly, if you had to compare,
you notice,
them
despite what you said
team.
About the other teams, by the way, they can play. Aside from they didn't do that well themselves on the Lucian army. Aside from that, they can play all the power picks. Like, look at all the others. Like they can play the Gwen, they can play the Zeri now. Like, they've actually got everything now. The MSI, if people don't know, Brooklyn couldn't play Gwen then. Like, actually, they were more of the team. The joke is they would have been the Sivir team now. Now they can play the Zeri.
Yeah, I think Flackett has been doing his job and looked especially good on the Callista, which is important because that's a very important pick in this meta. There's a lot to like here about G2 right now. The games they won very comfortably. The game they lost, I think, is explainable by they missed their timing window and it's whatever. They moved away from it. You do not, let's be clear, you do not have to play Twisted Fate in this meta. That's not a requirement. It's a luxury, and it was a game too that didn't mean very much. So I think G2 looks by far the best team in the LEC and LCS based on the playoff matches that we've seen, especially as we start to talk about LCS now, which you wanted to transition into.
Right, here's where I would start, because to start, before we get into all the deep analytical aspects, I have to actually sort of method act as though I was a really annoying, petty prick who just brings up things people have said in the past to be annoying Monty. Because you know what I thought after this series? I actually tweeted it today. I thought, this is all I thought, Monty. As soon as Cloud9 won this series over Real Geniuses, I just thought to myself, but how much would Evil Geniuses' score have been if they'd have had Jensen instead of Jojo, though? Oh, has that aged badly? Oh,
I mean,
it's almost like you should probably be in the league to make that joke, isn't it? You know, I mean, just to be fair.
The other
not
joke
that he was the reason why, but obviously they did win. They did beat the fucking EG.
The real joke, Thorin, is that he was kicked off of Team Liquid for Bjergsen, and now it's the two teams that didn't want him, EG and TL, who have to fight over the last remaining world spots for North America. Yeah. That storyline is just fucking incredible.
And by the way, how many times is this? You do know this guy goes to Worlds every single year. You know, every time he has games.
Out of the last 10 years.
I actually low-key think, because unfortunately, this is what's wild, dude. How can people simultaneously tell me who gives a shit about all of Doublelift's LCS trophies, because LCS is the kids table, but then tell me the problem Jensen has, who has this amazing international record, is not enough fucking kids table trophies? Well, which is it? Like, that's why you're so whack, fans. It's like, you actually will be like, where's all this LCS? Who gives a shit? He goes to Worlds and actually performs. What do you want? Because I agree, like, it's egg on the face for the rest of the region, mate. Imagine the fact, by the way, just like Niski over in Europe, this guy would have been just sat on the sidelines watching as everyone fielded, like, academy players and put squads down and shit when the split goes to shit. Like, we've got to fix this fucking ecosystem, guys. We can't have top players just sat out like this. Think about it, in the NFL, if you're like the 8th best wide receiver, you're never just going to be sat out unless you choose to. The fuck?
I mean, I think it is pretty wacky. I also think that Jensen didn't play super well throughout the split, so I didn't expect him to do as well in the games as he did.
I actually get the vibe. I don't know what your take here is. Like, look, for me, the one player who absolutely did his job all split is Berserker. Like, he just does look really good. And spoiler, he looks like the absolute best on the Zeri in that region. He just looks unbeatable, basically. Well, when you have this guy, already he's playing well. Like, I don't even think that the rest of them played super well. It's like the opponent just kept going down in level every time they play them. Like, by the way, if this continues, like, who knows? Maybe they can even win. Fuck it.
All right, let's talk about EG.
Let's do it.
This is obviously like. It's surprising in a way. Let's put it that way. But we've also never seen, I think, EG suffer individually this badly. Like, all of their players look like they slump simultaneously. But Jojo Pyun looked terrible on Azir. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. But not only was he terrible on Azir, he was just kind of inting to ganks that he knew were coming. Like, he knew some of these ganks were coming, and I'm sure Inspired was saying something to him, and he would just die. But his Azir mechanics were like fucking awful. like missing his ult, going in when he shouldn't, having positional errors. He did a lot better on the Lissandra and the Ahri, which are meta picks, but his Azir was kind of just really bad. When we look at the rest of the team,
which, by the way, is a spoiler, isn't a great sign, is it, when it's one of the most pickable fucking champions in the whole world? And, spoiler, if you want to be a great mid laner, I'd start working on that fucking Azir, mate. Like, it's going to be here forever. Or you hit Azir and Orianna, you have to at least have in your bag. At least in the bag, mate.
Now, Danny's a relatively new player, right? He's played fewer than 100 professional games. That said, he doesn't seem to be very good in this meta. And he doesn't seem to be able to play many of the meta picks. So, for example, he's played 3 Sivir games ever. 2 of them were in this series, and he lost both of them. His Zeri has an 85% win rate, but Cloud9 clearly came in with a game plan of we're just going to first pick Zeri and take it away from you. And Berserker is also better at Zeri than Danny is. Jinx is not really in the meta, which was the way that he was doing so well earlier this year. His Ezreal is okay. Historically has a 56% win rate on it. He does not play Draven. He has played 1 Kalista game ever. So where do you really go with this guy when it comes to the current champion pool and what
Seraphine?
Apparently,
who knew? I didn't even know that was an option. I wasn't even aware that was within the purview. You know,
dude, in NA, you can actually just hit 1 person with Seraphine ult, and you'll win a fight. Apparently, it's fucking wild to watch this shit. He's never played a game of Lucian professionally, so basically, he out of the 3 meta early game AD carries of Lucian, Draven, Kalista, he's played 1 game of Kalista, and that's it, ever. And then of the 2 late game carries that are super dominant, which are Zeri and Sivir, he is bad at Sivir, and his Zeri is good, but he can't play it because the other team won't let him.
The key thing to understand if you're a fan, because this always gets lost if people don't think of the holistic draft strategy, Monty, is it doesn't matter if what you say is true and even EG knows we've got to get him Zeri. They can't just first pick it, can they, guys? If they first pick it, then the other team goes, thanks, we take whatever wasn't banned, like Yubi and fucking Ornn or something. Like, you know what I mean? In that scenario, I think that's the part that's always missed by fans. You know, when they're like, just ban X, there's no just ban or pick. It's about the priority and how you trade. That's why even, you can tell the people, by the way, who don't understand draft strategy, because you know they're the ones who always think LS is an idiot for using that like MTG. That literally is how you draft, you idiot. That game is about how you play, what order you play the cards and stuff like that. He actually has a whole point with that, because I think that's so lost. It's like, it's not about whether you ban it, it's about where it has to be on the priority list, because otherwise you might ban one thing, but it's like plugging a hole in a ship and there's 4 big ones behind you. Like, you're still going to sink, aren't you? It's not going to work. Like, think about it, I can't be first picking for my ADC, by the way, on a team where it's not like we're going to smash them in 20 minutes. Like, we're probably going to have to get him to the point where he can carry. He's not going to carry from minute 1 on Zeri, is he?
Also, we saw some of the old problems that existed pre-MSI where, you know, Danny and Vulcan would just die in lane. Like, they weren't looking that good in the laning phase. So that came back in this series. I thought it was over. We hadn't seen it in a bit, but they were pretty bad in lane this series. We also saw Inspired not be very useful. Part of that was because Jojo on Azir was so bad that he was throwing in mid lane, and so that made his job very difficult. And then Impact was also just getting dumpstered by Fudge for unknown reasons. And Impact is the guy who always has the consistent conservative playoff performances. So I will chalk this up partially to, like, probably it was a bad day for EG. Like, I don't think it's likely that we're going to see all of these players perform this badly simultaneously again. But I also am concerned that Jojo Pyun can't play Azir. I'm concerned that Danny has a bad champion pool for this meta, or at least we don't know what his champion pool is because he's literally never played some of these champs. And that Zeri appears to be his only option. And what we see is that Cloud9 will just first pick Zeri on blue side, and you could just whatever ban it on red side, and it won't be that big of a deal. It looked really bad.
What worries me is there was some foreshadowing to this in those last few weeks. You saw them drop a bunch of the big high profile games, lose to their big rivals, etc. And now here's the reason why the playoff bracket is perfect. Because now they have TSM in the lower bracket. We'll tell you what, if EG's actually the team EG thinks they are, that's the pick me up. If that ends up being some like 5-game war where they barely get out of there, mate, they're probably not going to Worlds. Like Liquid will beat them.
Yeah,
and I don't think Liquid's that good either, mate.
I mean, and as we transition to the Team Liquid conversation, I mean, 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid was...
No, 100 Thieves org in general, by the way, because you know what? I got to give it to you, like you said last split. Everyone does always look when the form goes down and go, right, it's the end of that team, they're never coming back. They always somehow get it back together. They're doing a good job, the coaching staff, clearly.
Yeah, and they definitely have picked up their form. The first 2 games were very one-sided for 100 Thieves, and then the apparently perma-winning Seraphine and Bjergsen just pulls out the Zillion.
Yes.
Of course,
the fact that still works in 2022 just tilts me so much. Because if you don't know, guys, the other Zillion players don't even play it in the world. Like, even they know it's not a mid lane champion, but it's still, the joke is, it's like Bjergsen just always has that as an option, doesn't it? Right? Well, bring out the Zillion, and then everyone's like, no, please. Then everyone's like that Gooby meme, like, please, Bjergsen, not the Zillion, please. Like, so stupid, isn't it? Why does it work?
Jensen also didn't die with it in the last game. I mean, it's the same shit as the Seraphine. Like, if you're just not going to get punished early, you just ascend into godhood, where you revive your late game AD carry with full HP, at 35 minutes into the game or whatever, 30 minutes into the game, and then you win. But
yeah, you're just a mega overpowered support at that point in time.
There's no punishment. There's no punishment. So if Team Liquid's like, well, what if we just picked comfort picks? We'll put Whipple on the Urgot. Yeah. Okay. Santorin on Vi, and then we'll just play Sivir with the Zillion, and they're not going to punish us early, so we'll just get late game Sivir with like 3 revives.
Dude, even if they draft the Zillion, surely instantly, right? Closer and Abadagi, like, right, we're obviously just going to gank mid lane 24/7, right? Like, no, oh, okay, well, like, all right, I guess whatever you want, bro.
And then the next game is like the fucking like Nocturne Seraphine game from Team Liquid. I'm like, come on. And then of course 100 Thieves then pick Seraphine themselves and just finally puts Team Liquid in the dumpster. So I will say, like, 100 Thieves, when the games were normal, they did very well. When they had the best team, they did very well.
Yes.
I think if you're 100 Thieves, the problem with Team Liquid is, like, I would be very scared about Team Liquid's next opponent, because what the fuck do they do if they don't have the Seraphine or the Zillion? They kind of just waited for their opponents to do nothing and then scale and then have these incredibly strong crowd control or revive abilities. And that was their win condition, is like, hope our opponent does nothing, or hope, like, Whipple on set gets enormously fed in the top side, right? So I think Team Liquid struggles. Bjergsen's Azir is kind of bad outside of the laning phase. The rest of the Whippo's champion pool is incredibly strange and not terribly effective right now for the most part against most other meta champions. I think 100 Thieves kind of let their foot off the gas a little, figured they could beat these champions, didn't play proactively, and ended up just having to pick them themselves or take them out of the pool. So I'm not super hyped on Team Liquid. That's not the way you want to see them winning games. Sitting back and waiting for their opponents to lose, not great. I would have rather seen a Team Liquid that was like taking games with Draven, but the Draven just spent time being banned for a large majority of this series. Hansama wasn't able to pull it out. But yeah,
he would have had to pick it on like whatever red side away, but just never did, if you notice.
Yeah,
it was the other way around. I think it was like blue, maybe.
I mean, look, and
it was if he was on blue, he would have. He never picked it on blue, and then it was banned every time when they were on red.
Yeah.
But that implies, by the way, that's also not a massive priority for them. They could have forced that.
I mean, realistically, like, you should be able to blind the Draven. I think
you would think so.
If you're Team Liquid, just given Hansama's historic performance,
looks to me like he isn't comfortable on it, dude. I think he just doesn't want to play it. That's the vibe I got.
So I think this sets us up for a very interesting winners bracket finals, because Cloud9, they went kind of back to comfort with Fudge playing on Camille and Fiora and trying to carry out of the top lane. Berserker looked very good throughout the series. Blabber was questionable questionable, but Jensen performed much better than we've seen him in the past. So if this is Cloud9 kind of ramping up and 100 Thieves is struggling making proactive early plays against scaling compositions, there is a win angle, I think, for Cloud9. There is a way that Berserker just pops off in this series and takes it home for Cloud9. So I think overall, like, Cloud9 did a lot better than I would have expected, and 100 Thieves did a little bit worse.
No, I agree. Like, put it this way, at the moment, on raw form, 100 Thieves has to be the best team in the LCS. Like, EG does not at all warrant that. TL looks worse than ever. Cloud9's getting a little bit better, but as I say, it's not even like they're awesome themselves. Like, there was a world where they lost to CLG. That probably even should have happened, but instead they're in the upper bracket final because, well, fuck knows why. I don't know why I pretended there was an end to that sentence.
I mean, I do honestly, like, I do love what's going on. Like, I do love that Jensen made it back to Worlds.
Oh, I love it as well. The narrative's fucking fire. It's like he has plot armor, doesn't it? I know, he's got plot armor.
You know, getting cut by Team Liquid for Bjergsen, and then having EG and Team Liquid fight for the last spot, which is not guaranteed. Like, there's a world where CLG comes in and actually wins.
Yeah. No, that's so impossible
in their current conditions. So I don't think it's likely. I think it probably will be either EG or Team Liquid, but the narratives are really good, and I think all the members of Cloud9 played better than they had previously, but also to a certain degree, it was EG shooting themselves in the foot and having just a very individually bad day. I mean, Inspired played pretty bad.
Definitely didn't play the MVP, put it that way. Yeah, here's the one thing I would say.
He also had his lanes just fucking running it down and randomly dying. So it's very difficult.
Even Impact had some bad games as well. Yeah, he was like uncharacteristically bad. Here's the thing I would say though. This just shows you though, Monty, what you want one of your main content. If you look in LEC and LCS, it tells you how strong fucking ADC is on those power picks right now. Because if you have Upset, if you have Comp, if you have fucking Berserker, you can win these series. Like, if you can get those guys to the right position, these champions can carry.
Yeah, if you have Ruler, like, you know, it is a meta where with the right picks you can win absolutely any game. I mean, we've seen in the LPL some of these playoff games come from 10K deficits and be able to pull off these victories because of 80 carry play. So, all right, I can't talk about LEC or LCS anymore. It was so bad. It was all the games were just really terrible. Like, the West is going to get absolutely dunked on at Worlds if this is the level of competition that we're going to see. And I'm not super confident that is going to change between now and Worlds. Not a lot of opportunities in order for that to happen. And also, it just seems like there are some pretty fundamental differences in individual player ability as well as team cohesion that will be difficult to remedy in just a month. I hope I'm wrong.
If people want the context of, like, can it be really that bad? Because, for example, if they ever listen to the LCK podcast, obviously we're always saying that everyone except Gen.G and then sort of T1, they're like the good team. No, here's the thing. You don't even need the rest of the career. Like, spoiler, first of all, Live Sandbox would dust some of these teams off to the fucking yes. Pit. But even if I pretend that's not the case, all you need to know is this detail. And when you know this detail, you'll know why the West is in serious trouble. Is RNG and EDG have to play each other in the regional for one of them to even make Worlds. You're aware that that's the world champion and the MSI champion are going to play each other, and neither's bad, by the way. There's the other thing. So you can imagine China's pretty stacked at the moment. It's pretty wild. That's all I'm going to tell you. This actually could be basically the Worlds where, look, I'll give G2 from the West a chance, but minus G2, there's a real chance we finally get like the fucking all Asian playoffs. It's not important. It all depends on the group draw. It's not impossible this time, boys.
Yeah, especially because, like, you know, the Vietnamese teams have been on the rise for several years, or at least challenging the PCS teams. They're not have bad a lot of the time. So yeah, could be disastrous. Will be a very entertaining World for sure. I mean, it will be absolutely hilarious if all the NA teams get dumpstered in NA at Worlds. That would be quite.
It's the thing. I can't lie. Even though it's fucked up, because I actually, in some senses, because of the coaching angle and the team structure, I actually like Evil Geniuses as a team. I actually find them an enjoyable team to watch. Sure. Even that's also the reason, low key. I'm more on the Bjergsen hater side because I really want to make Worlds to just bomb it again. I know it's fucked up. I'm just saying it would be funny. I would laugh at least. All
right. We should get Jensen on now to talk about LPL, LCK finals. Lots to discuss there, especially with the upcoming LPL finals this next week. We have which teams are going to make it out of Korea in the regional gauntlet. So really good time to talk about Asia. That's why we wanted to focus on it more this week. especially because the finals in LCS and LEC are a little bit later on.
Also, a really good time to like, comment, and subscribe on this channel.
That's right. Why haven't you done that already? Thank you for it if you've already done it. We offer you tons of great content, lots of good shit coming up for Worlds as well. Thanks to esportsbet.io. As usual, use our referral link if you're going to be predicting through the end of the year in esports. Lots of stuff with the World Championship, the major in CSGO, all major esports available for betting on their website. And they have so many bonuses, as we've discussed. You can even play for free just by signing up with DJT and still win actual money. So good time to do that. We're going to take a quick break and be back with Jensen.
Right, we're back with our guest, which is Jensen Goh. Not obviously Jensen from Cloud9. He's busy at the moment.
It's a great week for Jensen's, though.
It is. It's a great week. Also for exposing frauds, as you'll find out. But here's the thing. I'll tell you actually a funny, quick anecdote, which is like slightly embarrassing. But as you know, I don't really have any shame in that regard. Right? I've even told Jensen this story myself, which is one time on Twitter, no, on Discord, because he is just also called Jensen on Discord. And you can imagine, Monty, I have the other Jensen on Discord. There was a night where I'm not joking, at like 3 in the morning or something. I was high as shit. And I did message the wrong one. And I asked this Jensen, like, I want to do like a reflections interview. And the way I knew I was wrong immediately was I'm pretty sure his response was like, oh, it'd be like a privilege to do that. And I was like, oh, wait, fart. And then I was like, yeah, I'll get back to you like on the off season with that maybe. And then like, obviously I just like quietly like, oh shit. Like, is there a way to, I like Googling, is there a way to delete your own memories? Like, you know, like, that happened is all I'm going to say. That happened. Okay. But the reason he's here now though, because I gave this build up on the Best Time League show, but it's a good angle. If people don't know, I like people generally who have their own take, their own perspective. But one thing I really like, it's why I've always liked the LSs of the world, the veterans, Monty, Froscorin. I like people who essentially try to make their own like actual system of modeling, basically. Like they don't just have like the same thing of like, the top lane. They have like their whole perspective like built on fundamental principles. And then the idea is if you have that lens, you can apply it to any region, any team. And so one of the things the reason I brought him as a guest on Best Damn League show is I knew he would have a different take on how he would break down the series. Like, for example, he had a really interesting one on the Rogue Mad Lions one. He had Rogue as like the farm team and the Mad Lions as like the map control team. It's like, how will the styles match? Whereas all everyone else does, obviously, is like just say early game, like loose terms out. They just say like, the ADC versus the ADC. Like, we just do all the fucking the boomer TV narratives, basically. So what I want to see, and this is what has been hyped here, so you better fucking deliver as well, is he has hyped the notion that we're going to do this with the LPL teams. By the way, the best region ever to do it with, because they're all stylistically different. And crucially, that's why, if you don't know, guys, LPL playoffs is a nightmare to predict, because it's not about number 1 versus number 3. It's like, does number 3 have a better style? Right? They beat number 1 then. That's how the fucking league goes. I can tell you as a top esports fan, no game is safe.
But it also helps explain a lot of LPL team performance at Worlds, because they all have such unique identities, which leads to when they arrive at Worlds and the Worlds meta hits, sometimes, you know, the Korean teams very consistently, like, at least make it out of groups compared to Chinese teams historically. And then sometimes you just get like FPX just fucking face planting like they did at Worlds last year. And then you get teams that probably, you know, shouldn't be as good as they are, actually kind of making it to the finals, winning Worlds sometimes that are not the favorites coming in.
Oh, when Suning made the finals was mental, man. That was ridiculous.
The fact that they like beat top anyway, sure. Like the fact that Suning made the finals was definitely like felt like a meta team, but also FPX winning Worlds was kind of like, well, you know, this is them stumbling into the right meta at the right time. So because of their styles, they tend to have very high highs, but they can also just completely shit the bed as a result.
What was it? To the fray.
Spoiler.
Sure.
So, Jensen, you spoiled on Twitter. You said that you were going to expose an Eastern team as a fraud. So let's go. Which is the fraud?
If you heard the convo before the break, we desperately need the fucking copium that there is a team to expose. So come on, who is the Asian team you're going to expose?
I think that's a few ways to start this conversation off. I'm just gonna put JDG on blast, right? Because I think that this team.
I thought it was top, but I'm curious why you think.
What's this thinking JDG's the truth now? So come on, hit me with it. Come on.
So if you're watching, I mean, it's a terrible week for me in terms of my model of League of Legends, right? Because if my model of League of Legends says that the map control teams, the map control style of play is a superior way to play, all the map control teams across the world are losing, right? EDG lost, XL lost, Mad Lions lost, EG lost, and the mistake reduction farm-centric type of teams are the ones that are winning instead in this series. So we could talk a little bit about the meta, or actually let's go into the meta now, and then I'll circle back as to why I think JDG are a fraud, right? Because I think that the way that Riot balances the game, right, and this is something that's very unique to esports itself, and I think what they've done throughout the entire summer split is that they have made very very drastic changes, right? It's like imagine you're a tennis player and you're playing at in the US Open, right, which is a hard court format, and then you reach the semifinals, and all of a sudden say, oh, we're going to be playing on a clay court now, right? Where the ball is slower. Sure, you can still apply the same basics and stuff like that, but now you got to put more spin on the ball. The approach to the game is going to be slightly different. And then when you go into the next round, sorry, let's go with quarterfinals first, right? Because this was a little bit more of a slow burn. And then when you go into it starts with semifinals, we play on a clay court. Quarterfinals we play on a clay court. Semifinals. Now what we're going to do is we're going to replace the tennis ball with a wiffle ball. So it flights even slower now and everything. And all of a sudden, when you reach the finals, instead of playing a best of 5, you're playing a best of 9 now, right? So they double the amount of game time overall. And this is what's happening in League of Legends as well, right? Where they came in summer, they started things off with the durability patch. And I had this like long thread about how I think that this is going to favor the farm-centric style teams a little bit more. Turns out the LPL teams and all these map control styles, they still have very good ways to attack the game. It didn't fundamentally change the game. Right, then things like Zeri became more prevalent. They introduced Silver back into the game. These champions, they're very good at being farm efficient and then winning fights when they're done in numbers. And I think the final big thing that saw the shift in the meta was the changes to Drake, where now simply starting a Drake off at 5:30 or 6 minutes is going to be very difficult simply because of how tanky the Drake is.
Yep.
So in the past, you would see teams forcing soul point fights at like 21, 22 minutes. Now that's easily been delayed by 4 to 5 minutes, which means that 80 carries, even if they're set behind, they get to very comfortably complete a second item, and if they're on par, they even can complete 3 items even before the soul point comes up as a game-winning objective. So this is how League of Legends is become like this entire idea of like you might be a served into a volley type of player. That's the tennis analogy once again. And all of a sudden, the speed of the game is not so slow, where it rewards a completely different style of play. Where if you're playing to just defend and you're just hitting jank shots, you're just dropping the ball, you're going for lobs and stuff like that, and you're playing to tire out your opponent rather than trying to actively win the game itself. This current meta, it rewards that a lot more. So I thought there was a little bit of hope at first when I was watching LNG play, and I actually thought that when the final 4 was LNG, EDG, and Top and JDG, I actually thought that LNG might be a secret dark horse to win that. We can talk a little bit about that series later on as well, because once again, I have a huge bias towards the dēlenda map control style of play, where he's playing to react, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And I always tell my players, laning phase doesn't matter, itemization doesn't matter, it's all about the mid game, right? But this current meta, the mid game doesn't matter. The 2 things that matters the most is the laning phase, because that dictates if you're on the driver's seat and what's the timer and windows in which you are forcing your opponents to come into you, and your ability to execute on those mid to late game team fights around 30 to 35 minutes. These are the 2 most important things to be able to do in this current meta.
And I think I was going to say, I think you're spot on with that, Jensen, because we've actually seen kind of a bifurcation of the meta into laning champs. So here's Lucian, Nami, here's Kalista, here's Draven, and then Sivir and Zeri, who are more, we're going to play passively and wait for some of this. As far as the dragon stuff goes, I generally agree, although I think if you have a dominant enough bot lane matchup or you're doing very well in your matchup, you actually, I mean, we still see 6-minute dragons, 7-minute dragons taken. But yeah, it's certainly much harder to take than before, but the rewards are also potentially greater, right? So there is a reason to do that. And in a way, it also helps keep some of these early game comp teams in the game for longer, or at least competitive when it comes to the late game. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I think that's what's so interesting about the current meta is we can see highly accelerated early games based on lane dominance, basically. But we also can see those leads evaporate once Zeri or a Sivir hits 4 items into the game, even if you have a massive gold deficit. I mean, we can just look at, start by talking about the JDG Top Esports series where that happened a lot. Also happened in the EDG Top series as well, where there were like 10K gold leads. And yes, mistakes had to be made in order to get there, but overcoming those kind of deficits traditionally has been quite hard, even when your opponent does make mistakes, because the value of some of these champions in late game team fighting is so high.
We can talk a little bit about the Zeri in the meta, right? So if you look at the champions who have the most pentakills in the history of League of Legends in competitive play, I'm not talking about solo queue. That's gonna be the Masti or Katarina or something where Silvers just pop off one, right? It's Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa's the top one with I think over 100, right? She's got 139, and then the second is Jinx with 89 kills, right? Zeri in 1 year of gameplay, she already has 35, and the reason why this champion is so strong is that usually
Clean up,
like
dude.
Kai'Sa
Okay, go.
can go in, and she's like this assassin type AD character that can instantly fight and back the team up a fight, right? Or you can play as Jinx, where you play this kite back style and then you re-engage once the opponent commits into you. Why is Zeri so broken right now is that you get to be both. You get to be both Kai'Sa and Jinx. You can play this. I'm gonna play it back. You come into me. I pop the ulti and then I go forward after that. Or you can play this assassin style of Zeri as well. And of course, Yuumi, everybody's favorite champion in the game, is obviously not with this champion, right? Most enchanters, they have the problem of like I can't keep up with 80 carry that's running at 7 million miles per hour, but Yuumi just sits on top of this area and they just run everybody down in the team fights.
Jensen, the way I've described her also on this show previously is she's just a win more champion because professional teams are pretty good at disengaging once they have a disadvantage. Like once they blow too many summoners or they use an ultimate or a member of the team dies. The problem is that once Zeri starts winning a fight, you cannot leave. Like you can't back and then try and contest 3v5 or 4v5 at a Baron by teleporting, right? She will literally just hunt every single member of your team down using her speed, her ability to go over walls, her ability to cancel recalls over walls, her ability to slow over walls. Like it's actually crazy. So basically what she does is she can clean up an entire team fight super easily, get that pentakill, and then turn onto objectives completely uncontested. And so her win more is really like I think the biggest problem with her kit right now, because you cannot stop her from just devouring your entire team once she starts, and there's very little counterplay.
And that's the Jinx part of it, right? The win more kind of situation. Yep. Same thing. Jinx gets a kill, she gets the reset, bonus AS and MS, and she can run people down. But the thing about Zeri is that Jinx needs help
take over walls
in the first place, right? This is Jinx that can go over a wall. She can go in there, support's exposed. I'm jumping. I one shot the support. And then now I'm running an entire team down as well. That's why I say that this champion gets to be both Jinx and Kai'Sa at the same time, and that's why I think it's so crazy.
And can poke as well. I mean, that's the other problem is like
and Varus too apparently.
when you're spamming the lasers, every few seconds, because if you have any amount of cooldown reduction, you're dealing with an ability that's coming out like every 5-6 seconds, basically critting, doing insane damage, and just softening up people before the fight even begins. So, I mean, it's very clear that at the professional level, this champion is like insanely broken, and is kind of what is shaping the overall entire meta right now. Because the existence of this champion is creating scenarios where you either have to match her with a Sivir in front to back team fighting, and Sivir's also broken, or you have to just shut her down so hard in the laning phase and in the early game that they have less, I won't say have no chance, they have less of a chance of dominating you in the late game because you can still dominate somebody in the late game.
Actually, talking about the Sivir matchup, this is something that I found that was quite interesting when I was just doing my prep for the show, was that I believe that Sivir in this Zeri versus Sivir matchup, Zeri has won 9 out of the last 10 games against Sivir. And I think that teams keep opting into it though, because in theory, Sivir gets pushed in the lane, you can kind of match her in the rest of the game. But the problem is that the type of champions that Sivir does well with actually do very poorly in the Zeri. So when you have Sivir, you usually want to have like it's the Sivir comp meme, right? You want to press R and then run with a bunch of meatballs and bruises and stuff like that. You know what's great at killing those champions? Zeri, right? Which is why Lucian, which seems to be the other champion, where I think a lot of people think that Lucian is this only early game champion where, yes, he gets a lot of agency in the laning phase, but his ability to take fights against Zeri and the Zeri comp without fully committing to the fight actually makes him the better answer against the Zeri Yuumi, Zeri Lulu style compositions. Right, but that's just an aside, right? Let's kind of go back to the topic of why I think JDG are frauds, right? So, yep, sorry.
Yeah, let's do it.
And so
I'm waiting for your opinion.
Is that I think that JDG is this is a situation where, I mean, it's like when in StarCraft you will have like these times where certain Zerg players or Terran players are put off space, and all of a sudden they're like winning tournaments and stuff like that because of a patch and a certain type of unit or a certain map in the pool becomes particularly strong for one particular type of strategy.
Basically, the best example ever is in StarCraft 2 when Zerg was overpowered. It wasn't that like the best Zerg champion gets dissed, but if you're a guy who never came close to a championship and you suddenly won it, they called you a patch Zerg because the premise was it's only because the patch basically made you hyper powerful for that one time. That's what you're sort of implying here, right? That's why, because if people don't know, JDG, look, they were still a good team all split, but they weren't like the best team like they're looking now. So I'm assuming the premise is going to be that this meta has like boosted them a little bit.
Because if you look at where JDG is strong at, right, I think that where they've really excelled in is in the laning phase. And in terms of these late game team fights and stuff like that, I think they're doing fine. They're doing better than some of the other teams who are obviously just making very serious team fighting mistakes. So I'm not too sure as in this is a team that plays more towards like mystic reduction and stuff like that. And given the nature of the LPL, it's very difficult to watch every single game. And JDG wasn't one of the teams that I watch very religiously in terms of like this is a team that I really like, right? Because I prefer not to watch the win game type of teams. And this team is going to be a fraud, and I'm calling them a fraud because I think that this is a team that if they win the LPL, which is they're facing off against TES, they're gonna play a best of 5. There is a world where they win the LPL. They're going to go into Worlds. Everybody's going to be hyping them. They're going to be looking at all these players saying that, wow, these guys are so great. We don't know how the metagame is going to be changing when it goes to Worlds. And this is a team that there's a very good chance they just completely bomb all of groups. Because I think that this team has got no idea how to play the mid game. And even then, with all these leads they're getting, even in the LNG set where they 3-0 them and stuff like that, you give that to any other team, and that game was over in 20 minutes. And when JDG plays it, their mid game is so atrocious where it comes to a point where these teams with 8,000 goal deficits can find ways back into the game, can find ways to get to the team fighting phase, and then it just goes back and forth. And the TES JDG series, a lot of people would say that that's the best series that of League of Legends in 2022, and possibly in the history of League of Legends. But to me, as somebody
not that one, the first one maybe, the second one no.
Yeah, the second one's more like the LoL esports Fion take, which gets all the attention on Twitter.
Yeah,
the first one was good. Let's stick with the first one.
As somebody who models the game in this like chess manner, right? This is an absolute nightmare. I hate watching this series because this is a team that gets a lead. They don't know how to press the lead. They don't understand what it means to be first on the map. They don't know how to approach mid lane, and the setups for the objectives are very wonky. I would almost say that this is where you would say that and people always say, oh, but in China and Korea they always do these ARMs too, right? So why is it that people always stuff at NA? It almost felt like that. There's some differences here, right? Because they're like playing chess, they're putting the knight in these places, but the knight grows wings and all of a sudden he's like taking 3 pieces. So that's the difference between what they're doing in the LPL and in the LCS or some of the lower tier.
The only problem with that analogy is maybe don't use the fucking knight when there is a player called knight in the game, Jensen. That's the only reason you confused me. I got lost there. Like, so wait a minute, what was he playing? Like fucking, he was playing Swain or something, I guess. He got wings or something. He was flying or something. All right,
I mean,
he meant the piece in chess, obviously. The
analogy. I'll play devil's advocate here for you a little bit, and I'll talk about what was good about this series. So there were, first off, the team fighting was really good, I think, in this series overall. And so when we're just talking about team fight micro, what was so impressive is that both teams were doing an excellent job of keeping track of summoner cooldowns. They had very clear objectives in both fights, which led to really skillful and very even team fighting because each team would like kill half the other team and then have to withdraw licking their wounds because they knew exactly like which target they needed to go on in this fight based on the positioning, based on cooldowns, et cetera, et cetera. To sing JDG's praises a little bit, one thing that they do very well is that they are not cowards, and even when they're down, they are going to try and fight, and they are really good at finding the right engage from a deficit. Like they will identify who is weak, when they can strike, and they just all in instantly with one mind and are able to pull off some rather unlikely engages on certain targets if they're left alone, as we saw against Top Esports. So I do think that, and Hope also played really well in this series in terms of team fighting ADC. I think Yagao's rise was really impressive. He was pretty good on some of these other champions. I think the downside to this is that Top, as good as Jackie Love was, Wayward has had a kind of a bad couple of series, which is unfortunate considering he was
still essentially a rookie, to be fair.
Yeah,
I give him leeway on that one.
Yeah, and Knight also was not great in the mid and late games. Like, he didn't have a lot of the carry performances that you would want out of him. So I think like the top performers on top were more or less like Mark stepped up, I would say. Mark was pretty good in this series, but Jackie Love was particularly impressive. But I do think the solo lanes left something to be desired on Top Esports.
I guess I want to ask a question from Jensen on that one, which is one of the things, like, I'm a massive Knight fanboy, by the way. I actually do think this guy was like the best player in the world every day except World / the LPL finals for about the last 3 years. Like, he does look, basically, people don't know, the eye test checks out like a motherfucker on this player. He is so good. But then the problem is, when you're that good, anytime you ever do basically just play a normal game, you wonder what's going on. So one thing I wondered about this one here is, like, some of the drafting, like, it does look like they drafted for the player I watched, dude. Like, why is he playing Lissandra? You know what I mean? Like, why is he on these champions? Like, Knight's the guy you want on the Silas. You want him, like, smashing the game, dude. Like, what do you think, Jensen? Do you think they were, like, too conservative with the draft on him, or they were trying to play to the meta or something? What do you think?
I think it's more towards what the meta affords them at this point of time. And it's also a lot about trying to identify like what the scrim blocks were, right? I think that this is only after this weekend where the cookie kind of crumbled, and then we see all the map control teams losing, and then this idea of like the proactive mod was a proactive style of play, not necessarily being better. I think it did Lissandra against that was against Ari, right?
Yeah.
So you're just looking for like that lockdown against him. It's not like they're putting it actively like how V5 would blind pick Lissandra for rookie, right? So it's more of like a champion specific thing. It's a matchup specific thing. And of course, I think Knight's most well known. The champion that people most closely associate with him is Syndra, which is a champion that's been out of meta for some time now. So
it's all Bjergsen, but yeah, keep going.
Did he play Syndra this weekend?
He played it. He did play it in LCS. He did play it in LCS. Yeah.
Right.
He lost, unsurprisingly. But I also think, at least in the Lissandra pick, Thorin, that like when you're playing the Draven and you're playing into like Vi can't ult Lissandra as long as Lissandra's ult is up. That's what he's playing into. You can lock down Ari. You can lock down the Lucian, who's going to have to be on the front line at some point in time in a team fight, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense with that composition. Also, it went on a little
sense,
long.
But here's the difference, though. It can make sense in the comp. I'm just saying, if I have Knight, I don't want him playing fucking Lissandra and Galio. He's not going to be hiding. Whatever.
I mean, he wasn't really good on the Talia either. Like, he got caught a lot in this series, I would say, which was disappointing. There is, like I said, some credit to given to JDG because they are very good at engaging on you. And one thing that always tilted me about this JDG team this year has been watching them. Sometimes they just like, they'll see you in the enemy jungle and like their whole team will just run in where there's no vision and just like try and kill you. Like, if they see you, they will try and kill you, which can work very well if you're out of position. But if you're in position and they don't have vision, they can just completely int at times.
So that kind of ties into why I'm saying that JDG are frauds, right? Because I think that is the right idea, right? When you're ahead on the map, when you have the lead, that's actually how you want to play the game. But the way that JDG is doing it, the way that 369 is just walking through the jungle, just getting chunked for free, it should be the other way around. Is you're walking into the opponent's jungle and you're chunking the opponents for free because they're done on numbers and you have done the correct setup, so that you know that you have the numbers advantage when you're walking in there. And that's why I say that even then, when I'm just watching JDG in the mid game, they're kind of like they have this very strange idea of what it means to push the agenda in the game, where they're trying to look for these fights, but they're not doing the right prerequisite steps in order to achieve that. And that's kind of why I think that if the meta changes a little bit at Worlds, or even in this meta where if they go against, so this is where the copium comes in for the Western teams, right? Where right now, if this meta is going to reward all its Mystic reduction teams, where all they're going to be doing is stealthing and stuff like that, this is how JDG is going to lose games against them. They're going to go in there, they're going to get big leads against the likes of 100 Thieves and Rogue and stuff like that. But once they reach the mid game, you're going to see 369, it's a 9 all to the laning phase, and in the mid game, he's going back to being a tree, and he's just giving away free kills. He's putting his team into bad fights.
I do love that meme about 369.
Because, by the way, it's just like so applicable to his style. Although I will say, to be fair, he was way better these playoffs. He looked like the joke is once he left Top Esports, he's got way better, it seems like.
I mean, 369 is that guy, is that teammate in solo queue, right? Where they're like 4-5-0 from the laning phase and stuff like that, and they start to take all these stupid fights in the mid game, and they start to say, where's my team and stuff like that, and they start flaming you and say, but I'm 5-0, now 5-1 after they died, right? And I'm 5-1 and you're 0-1 or 1-1, so don't talk to me and stuff like that. That kind of
Renekton player ever, basically. Every Renekton top laner, there you go, in solo queue, exactly.
That kind of feels like what I'm watching when I see these guys play, right? So I think that this is a team that has a very good chance of, and you won't get to see them play. So there's going to be until the group stage. So there's going to be all these emitters around them. They're going to like lose a game or two in the group stage. So people are going to be like, oh, maybe they just turn it on and stuff like that. I don't think this team can like turn it on and stuff, because this is a team that they have to, if this is what they're showing in the LPL playoffs, I'm just very concerned for them in general. And back to the topic of Knight, if you really want to see, if you're a Knight fanboy, if you want to see how good Knight is, and if Knight is going to be, if you're someone writing an article for LoL esports, before you put anybody else over there, go and watch EDG versus the first game of EDG versus TS. That is what you want to see from Knight when he played at the Kali. And this is why I was thinking FSK, maybe there are two frauds coming from the LPL, right? It's 2020 again, TS and JG representing the LPL, right? Oh, it's this combo, and maybe the LCK wins Worlds once again when these two teams are at the top.
Season 10 trigger activated.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to talk about too, because Top has thrown some pretty big leads, and like it's concerning to see that in some of the JDG series, but also like I guess you see them coming back against EDG, but realistically that EDG series probably should have been game 2 and especially game 3 wins for EDG. EDG had like a 10,000 gold lead, and yes, Jackie Love played out of his mind, but it also was like Flandre getting caught in a dark jungle alone in multiple games. Like I don't know what Flandre was thinking in some of these games. He would literally like be in his side of the jungle. It would be completely dark. He would walk in there, see one member of Top Esports, start trying to kill them, while Viper, who is mega fed, is literally on the opposite side of the map. He has no idea where the rest of the members of Top are, and he just dies. He just, all of a sudden, 4 members of Top are there, and he's just dead. And Viper and Scout are just like running around the map, being like, "Wait for me, Flandre!" Like the macro was absolutely horrible from EDG. And it cost them that then they would give up Baron, give up a bunch of objective bounties. It was pretty sloppy.
I actually at EDG is quite highly rated in terms of the chess game macro team until that Top Esports series. That it's kind of the opposite, right? Because I thought that Top Esports was, once again, it's like everybody criticizes Knight, and like Top Esports is, I think in 2020, right, where Peter Dunn characterized them as the one lane team from the LPL, and that's the way that they played the game, and that's how the JDG set played out, and this is kind of why like people hyped it up, because these two teams just kept ramming hits into each other and kept taking this 5-on-5s in around the mid lane in the set. But when they played against EDG, they understood how to play around the side lanes. They set things up really well in their first game. And of course, when it came to the team fighting portion in the subsequent games, they were able to turn it around as well. So that's where I actually gave more marketing to TS. So, well, they know how to do these style setups where they're connecting the solo laners and setting up these traps for the dirty inters on the side lane and stuff like that. And that's where my stock on TS probably went up a little bit higher, and I took them out of the fraud category. And it's like, I think that this is a team that they have the tools to play against the LCK. But the thing is, it kind of feels like they play to the strengths of their opponent, right? If they played this way against JDG, yes, I actually think they would have won that set if they chose to play the macro game against them instead of trying to fight them strength for strength. And then they chose to play the macro game against EDG. Of course, their strengths in terms of like the team fighting and stuff like that, and just abusing the fact that Flandre, I don't know, maybe he wants to go on an early holiday or something. Right.
It's what's wild though, dude, right? Again, as someone who's followed Knight's whole career, think about this, Jensen, right? I was loving it when that news came in that off-season. Like, you won't believe this. They've traded fucking 369 for Zoom. It's like, oh, it's over, boys. You guys don't even know. The 369 motherfuckers entered so many of those games for Top in the past. He's gone now, finally. He's gone. He's a bomb. Get him out. Get Zoom in here, the best. Spoiler. There's a reason we haven't said Zoom's name yet. He got benched immediately, and the fucking Wayward guy came in and it's just been played instead. Zoom is gone. It's just over. So then, right, the reason I always hated 369 was exactly the meme. He's just there's too much high variance to his playing style. So of all the players they get, here's the difference. I was cool with Karsa. Yeah, Karsa can throw the odd game. He's a really solid player. Of course, they had to bring the same variance, but into the fucking jungle, because they brought me Tian, another fucking Tian giveth, Tian taketh away player. And what's brilliant is, if people don't know, he's had a really good split. He was the fucking MVP. He was awesome. But if you saw game 5, oh, that's what it all leads to. That's what it leads to. That you're the MVP, you're winning all these games. It's awesome. Gets that game 5, the ultimate betrayal. The ultimate betrayal.
I mean,
that was so rough.
The Tian story is very interesting, right? Because he's the MVP of the World Championship.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, true.
Last year, he was fucking terrible at Worlds on FPX. Then he is now the summer split MVP, coming off an amazing split. I know Dom now thinks he's like the best jungler of all time because Dom just like deleted Worlds from his brain last year, I guess. and now, like in these playoffs, he definitely had some whoopsie moments. Also played very well in some of the games.
So. Go on, Jensen. What do you think?
on Tien or on top?
Yeah, on Tien.
I think this is. I mean, last year's performance on FPX is injured. I think this is not a fair.
He had like RSI injury at the time, basically. That's why if people don't know, he was actually out most of the year, mix of like in and injury, and he only came in late in the summer, right? I think, right?
Yeah, and that performance at Worlds is probably something that you have to look back and remember that this is a team that have fallen apart, right? And I think when it comes to a lot of these like top performing, super performing teams, we can talk a little bit about V5 later because I think that they have kind of moved into this camp as well, where the team starts to come apart at the seams, and maybe that's where EDG is at the moment. Like this is all pure speculation, right? So I don't have any inside information as to what's happening with these teams, and that's what happened at FPX last year, right? That where you hear all these accounts where people are saying that Nuguri took a break after the Worlds for a reason. So I wouldn't judge him based off that World's performance, and I think that this is a team where at first I really hated watching TaS in spring because this is a team that they would just take these flips and they'll fight you mid 2v2 regardless of the situation, right? And they'll just outhands you. So once again, for the people who are like, oh, it's all about mechanics, it's like this is the best team in the world, and for me it's like, no, you're not supposed to win that fight, but they just win it anyway, right? Kind of scenario. So that was kind of my thoughts on Tien. But I think in the summer split, especially in playoffs so far, I think that they've been solid so far. Inconsistency, I think that that just comes with the jungle role, man. Like sometimes you gotta take your shots, especially with the rest of your team, especially your solo lanes being Knight and Wayward. It's kind of been the identity of every single Knight team where you're willing to take these fights, and sometimes you int it, sometimes you just int it.
It's the reason why all top esports lineups, which as you say now, the joke is there's only Knight and fucking Jackie Love left. Like they're all this massive high variance. They can either like beat anyone, but they can lose to the exact same team the next game. They really are like that insane. And also, by the way, one thing I'll actually give mad props to Tien for is that he'd done this all without Doinby. Because I'll tell you what, if you don't know, the dirty secret in the Chinese scene was everyone just gave credit for his world performance to Doinby. Everyone just said, oh, Chris and Tien, yeah, they look good on the screen, but it's secretly Doinby just fucking pop it in them. So listen, that might even have been true early on, but listen, he doesn't have Doinby anymore. He was the fucking MVP, deservedly so. So yeah, I think it's clearly had some development as a player.
Yeah, I mean, talked about Doinby. Should we move on to LNG?
Yeah,
I do think that this is a team that, I don't know. This is just my bias speaking, but I really want to see these go to Worlds. You know, they looked so bad in summer, and then when it came to the playoffs, they're doing the Nocturne, they're doing the Renekton. I just want to see the interface of this meta, right? And how Doinby is baiting all these teams into picking Renekton and stuff like that, and they look so bad on it. They're building wrong, they're playing it wrong, and it's a very idiosyncratic Doinby team. And I think that if the LPL wants to like kind of maximize its chances in terms of going to Worlds, I really hope they send LNG, because if it shifts back into this map control style, LNG is the best team in the world doing that. I think that they have. He looks like he's inting in some of these games in the mid game, but it's actually very tactical, right? It's like he's using the Mega Nart to draw lots of pressure, and he's got the most important thing is that how to tell if a player is inting on the side lane or not is if he dies, right? If he gets the wave, then there's an argument as like did he sufficiently draw pressure, right? But if you're just
you can die if you draw enough pressure, right? It's okay to die sometimes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And how you determine as long as your team is trading cross map and you're not just like falling behind crazily in terms of farm and levels, then it can be okay.
And how you determine that is the question is did he get the wave, right? And when I'm watching Ollie, he's getting the wave and he's getting out in all these situations, and because of the way that he and Doinby are playing with this very playing through side lane kind of style, which flies in the face of what this meta currently rewards, is that they're getting all these pushing side lanes and they're able to create numbers advantages. But unfortunately, Zeri and Silver just show up and they just win the team fight, I guess. So
I love that angle though, because what's gangster as fuck about that Doinby angle is he's actually like mind gaming the shit out of the opponent, because he's getting them to pick the champions he's picking, thinking they're really good, and then when they're terrible, that's just going to ultra mind game you, because then you just lost completely. Like, well, fuck. Do I stop him taking them? But wait, if it's not good though, then why would I stop? So fuck, wait, shit. Do I want to? Do I even want that champion? Or do I want him to have it? Or do I not? Like, it's like if you do the betting, Monty. You know when you bet one way and you're like, oh, I'm sick of losing to that team. Right? What? I bet on that team this time. If they then lose, you just lost, aren't you? Like, well, I'm just shit then. It's just me, isn't it? Like, fuck. Like in that scenario, like I don't know what you do in that case, mate. Like, because that's the thing about Doinby always is like, it's clear, by the way. I used to think he only did these picks because he just couldn't lane the better champions. But if you saw like the last year, he could lane anything he wants, mate. Like he's doing this out of choice. Like he must be your favorite player in that sense, then, Jensen. If you want someone where it's like it's not about even laning, like it's about like what can this champion do in the mid game? Like what power does it have, right?
Yeah, precisely. And I think that a lot of what I base the game on is like just from watching Doinby's teams play, right? And I mean, I think there's been things on the record that say that he's effectively a player coach. He kind of like warps the team around to play his style of League of Legends, which has
basically what the analogy, Monty, is. He basically is Peyton Manning. He's like the offensive coordinator, but while playing the game as well. He's trying to run the game like that, isn't he? That's the analogy.
So I'm really hoping that LNG makes it to Worlds, and I think that this is there's a world out there where I think it's very possible that LNG was just absolutely destroying scrims with this Renekton mid and stuff like that, which is why we see like teams in the LCK start to pick it up as well with Faker playing the Renekton mid, although I think they didn't capture the essence of why this champion was strong, and it's something that I think that there's only two teams in the world who should ever do it, right? One is LNG, and the second is G2. Because I think that these are the only two teams, and I would say possibly Test after what I saw against EDG, right? I think that these are the only three teams that understand what's the purpose of this champion, why you build the ranking and not God Drinker, and the idea is that you're not playing this as the traditional Renekton where you want to spike and you want to team fight. You're playing him so that you get some for priority, and then you have a champion that wins on side lane, then you hit your blood ranking spike, and then you build tank here after that, and you use that to create these advantages in the side lanes, right? But if you're a Mystic Reduction, kind of scaling team fighting double team, stay away, very, very far away from the Renekton, and stick to the Ornn, play the Sejuani instead, or just play a Jax in the top lane or something, you know, if you really want something that can really fight in those places, because you don't have the build up to really understand that this is the timings that he's looking for, and this is what he's trying to achieve with it. And we saw it's a very interesting parallel, right? Because in that game, in the third game of LNG versus was it JDG, right?
JDG.
They lost mid 2v2 twice, right? And a lot of people is like, wow, if you do Renekton heavily and you die mid 2v2, the game is kind of over, right? But they pulled that game back. They actually knew how to pull that game back. And they actually made the game look competitive. And Doinby was just doing so much on the Renekton. He wasn't like beasting in team fights and stuff like that. At first, when I saw them die mid, I said, oh, well, this game looks like it's over. The Renekton's going to be a cannon minion. And then he's just doing all these things on the side lane. He's getting so much map pressure for them, where they're actually able to put themselves in the winning position. Unfortunately, like just kind of like Renan and into the game away on the mid lane when they had the Baron buff. But you compare it to the T1 game where the same thing happened, right? They played the Renekton into the silence, they died 2v2 mid, and then the game just looks so terrible from that point from that point onwards, right? Where it feels like they can't get a single footing in the game, and it just looks completely doomed from T1 from that point.
Here's the thing. Obviously, you hinted at earlier. We've got to talk about V5. Because if people don't know, Top and V5 were supposed to be the best fucking LPL teams if you went with most of the split. And, mate, I'm so sick of the same. It's funny that it's mad how many people's storyline, even if they change team and teammate, is just the same in the LPL. So in the same way as every top lineup, even if you change a bunch of the players, always is this like they're always like the team that should win the whole playoffs, but then they lose a match early and then it's game 5. So it's always way it's got. The Doinby, if people don't know, the Doinby one's the same. Everything, even though it's all different teammates, same style of play, always is way more successful than it should be, doesn't always win. The Rookie one is doing my nut in at the moment, mate, because individually, Rookie, I actually think has surpassed Faker in terms of body of work. He has way more years as the best mid laner in the world than Faker does. Go count him up. If you don't know, you just didn't watch the LPL, I'm just telling you. He's fucking unbelievable, and he's playing more competition, he's playing best of threes, the playoff format's sturdy as fuck. You sometimes play the best team twice in 2B05s. Like, you can't fuck with that. The body of work's nuts. But this is what sucks.
Doesn't have a jungler.
A lot of times he's had some really whack teammates. This is what sucks. Dude, how many fucking years does his team have to be the best in spring and then fall apart right when the fucking summer playoffs comes about, right at the point where you have the gauntlet or you have to win? Dude, if he doesn't go to Worlds, I'm going to be so tilted this time, because the joke is Rookie has been good enough to go to Worlds like something like the last 4 years in a row, and he made it one time. It's so fucking sick. It looks like it's going to happen again, doesn't it? V5's going to fucking throw it, aren't they?
I mean, it's I don't want to say no. This is a team where, as early as February, I thought that this is the best team in the world, right? And they kind of choked it. I think that this is where they got hit by the TES mojo, right, in the spring playoffs. And then when it went to summer, this team, they continued to look like Rookie was at a break, Dream was playing. It's like, well, even with a substitute playing, this identity of the team. And to the add on to the point about Rookie, I used to be like, yeah, he's really good at playing that Rookie style. And when he was still playing on IG, where he plays the Oriana and is like really good at majors stuff, like what people think of like Chovy and stuff like that. And I wasn't really a big fan of that, where I would say that I always prefer the dēlenda. But I think that this year he really stepped up his game. He really picked up the Lissandra, played the Galio, and played this map control style as well. He really expanded his pool. It's kind of like when Faker did that very impressive season 7 run with the Galio, where he transcended what it meant to be a mid laner. So I felt that Rookie achieved that. I thought that this was a very intelligent GMing decision, putting this team together. Rich, not the best top laner in the world, but very serviceable and very suitable to this mid jungle pairing of Rookie and Karsa, right? And at the bot lane, it's like floating and PP God. Okay, PP God, engaged support player, suits the style of what they want to try to do. I thought that this was a very well put together team. And so when they started putting these results, they evolved Rookie style to be able to play this map control style as well. I thought that this team would definitely be the best team at Worlds. And all of a sudden, okay, Xiaolong Bao was playing in the jungle, XLB is playing in the jungle, right? And you started wondering like what's going on in the camp, and they beat JDG, right? They beat JDG with Karsa, and after that, Karsa's no longer playing until they are down 1-2, something like that. And then Karsa has to come back on, right?
I mean,
the rumors that he didn't scrim with the team at all after they beat JDG.
After a Belveth game too. I mean,
it's just had the vibe of that whole Nagori swapping Damwon. It's like, what's going on here? What the fuck is going on when I'm not in the room? What?
So it just looks like internally there's a lot of disagreements probably over what the team identity is, over what the meta is like. And I wouldn't say that this is entirely on their fault, right? It's like we talked about the entire tennis analogy, right? This game has changed. You're not playing a hard court, you're playing on a clay court with a wiffle ball, and then the tension of your rackets now is no longer standard tension. The Riot has changed all of these things. Right, so probably there's a lot of disagreements in the back room, and probably that's the reason why we're seeing these things happening. Karsa has always been, once again, very idiosyncratic player, right? 2020, when he went to Worlds, it's one of my favorite quotes in League of Legends all time, right? Where he said, when you play well, you are the meta, right? And when everybody's asking, oh, why aren't you playing like this Graves, Nilly, and stuff like that? He's just playing Lee Sin every single game, and everybody's like just running around circles, running him. Is like, nope, screw that. I'm ganking this lane, and he makes it work.
That is a fire quote, I can't lie. That's on some like, but you can't play that. That's not better. Like, I am the meta. I am the meta. Exactly. There you go. That's the same.
So I'm guessing there's probably some internal team disagreements about where to proceed and how they want to play in this meta, right? Which is also, once again, the disadvantages of maybe Rookie transcending this style, right? That now that, oh, wait, I can do this and I can do that, but which one do I choose? Because you can't be Galio and Azir at the same time, right? So you have to make a choice and draft. You have to make a decision, and probably that's where my guess is where the team started to fray apart in terms of like where's the identity, how they want to play, and I think that that's where they're struggling with right now. Hopefully they can pull it back together. I really hope we get to see that Rookie Karsa kind of iteration when they go in to the final playoff set. They play against LNG in the first round. If either of those teams make it, I hope if V5 makes it, I hope it's because they got their stuff together and they know how to get back to playing this map control style. Because I would really like to see at least one strong map control team from the LPL go to Worlds, right? Be it V5 or LNG, with either Rookie or don't be leading that.
And for those of you who are unaware, both LPL and LCK are using the same regional qualifier system, which is that the top 2 remaining seeds play each other, and they basically have double elimination, and then the next 2 seeds play each other, and they have single elimination. So basically, it'll be RNG versus EDG. Winner gets the 3rd seed. Loser will go into another best of 5. V5 and LNG play each other. Loser is eliminated, and the winner of that goes to play the loser of RNG versus EDG. Same shit over in Korea, where you see it will be Damwon versus Live Sandbox in the double elim part of the bracket, and then it will be KT versus DRX in the single elim part of the bracket. So if you're familiar,
by the way, go on.
If you're familiar with LCS and LEC playoffs, how some of the teams get automatically seeded in the lower bracket, it's like that, but with 4 teams instead of 6 or 8.
All I want to say is, can we just spare a thought for the real victim of V4's downfall, who is, of course, Theon, the former writer from Opcomer? Because if you don't think Theon, when this team was the best in spring and then looking amazing in summer, had like 90% of an article scripted about Rich and about how he was the hots faker and now he's going to win the LPL. If you don't think that was just waiting to be dropped, it was. The
storylines are insane, right? Because you have Heroes of the Storm faker versus League of Legends faker. You have Rookie versus faker potentially. Like all these matchups are very juicy when it comes to the storylines, which is why we want to see V5 at Worlds, because we, in spite of their careers, it has been few and far between that we've actually seen Rookie and faker play against each other, because Rookie left at the end of 2014. It was before his big ascension. By the time Rookie's team was good, I will say good in quotes, because I don't think KT Arrows were ever actually good, even though they won summer. I mean, SKT was shitty by the end of that year. They had the undefeated split at the start, but by the time spring and summer rolled around, they were kind of bad. So it wasn't because of faker, it was because everybody else on SKT was playing really badly.
So replace everyone, even Bengi was subbed. So everyone except Faker was out the team. So
it was bad by the end of 2014 for SKT. So this is all to say that we've never actually seen very many games with both Rookie and faker in good form with good teammates.
Indeed.
It's definitely a shame. I think that, we always go back to complaining about the Worlds format, right? About how it creates a situation where, because of the seeding and you can't get your own region in your group, so you just end up with all these mirror matches until the very end, and then the finals is basically one LCK team versus the LPL team, and it's just LPL versus LPL on one side, LCK versus LCK on the other side, which is just... It might happen again this year. Has Riot announced the format yet, in terms of how they're seeding things with the force?
The problem is, I don't know about like the first part, but as Monty pointed out at the time, if you just look at like the dates of like the playoffs,
they've released,
it must be the same normal 8-team single in bracket once it gets to playoffs, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just the dates they've announced. There's no other possibility that it could be anything different. So I wouldn't hold out hope this year that it will change, even though hilariously, obviously, Valorant is running GSL groups into 8-team double elim, which is kind of what we want for Worlds, but apparently we can't have that. Also, I mean, the seeding is always going to be an issue. So I don't know if that'll be fixed. I hate the seeding less than I hate the format. I will say that. So if I had to prioritize one, I'd prioritize the format change, because I think the seeding problem, if you have double elim in groups and double elim in bracket, mostly will resolve itself. With some fringe
the thing
cases.
is that there's only hope that they change the seeding now, right? The way that groups are seeded, that's the only thing that's hope for, right? Because everything else, the schedule is locked in stone already, right?
Yeah, that's definitely not going to happen. I don't think that really is a possibility of changing. I think they already would have announced that if that was the case. I think they're just going to run it back. What they're doing is what Riot always does, is because they know that people are going to be pissed, so they're going to try and like hide the announcement, right? If they thought it was something people would like, Jensen, they would have already said something, right? They would.
They wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't like just reveal last second.
They would have fucking had a parade for themselves publicly already.
Well, the joke that we always make on this show is the day that Riot actually puts Worlds to be double elim, they will present it as though they've just invented double elim. That's the joke, like exactly. Yes, very much.
We invented it in Valorant, and we've realized that this is really good in Valorant, because we couldn't have possibly realized it was good unless we did it in our own different game first. So we're deciding to bring it to you as a gift to you, League of Legends fans. Please kiss the ring, kneel before God, thank him for his benevolence. Enjoy your world championship.
I think that there was one thing that was not really talked about, is about the play-in format, about how there's going to be 5 teams for the major regions in the play-ins, and there's only four slots to qualify for. I might be wrong on this, but that was my initial impression when I first...
No. There's only 4 seeds. I'm sorry, for the...
Are 2 teams not from EU not playing and starting in the play-ins?
2 teams from EU are playing in the play-ins, yes.
Right, so 2 teams from EU, 1 team from LCK, 1 team from LPL, 1 team from LCS, right?
Yes.
So 5 teams in the play-ins, and there's only 4 slots to qualify for.
Yes.
Okay.
5 major region teams. That now I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So one major region
team would not make it out.
In theory, yes, make through. That's a pretty big change. I mean, I will say, it's not like LCS hasn't deserved the possibility of that for many fucking years. You were just getting boosted, getting those free slots, weren't you? What the fuck? So I can't complain that much, mate. Because here's the problem. I'm not going to complain about any change which just gives a chance for even more really good LPL and LCK teams to make the main event great. That's what I've wanted the whole time. In fact, if you don't know, this is how strong LPL is. This is why Riot can never win. In the era when the LPL really did only have like 3 strong teams, that was when they only had those seeds. Like now they have 4 seeds, but now there's like 6 teams you'd want there. Like you can't win. You can never win with the LPL, sadly.
In fact, the 4 teams I would have liked to see from the LPL, the 4 that are playing the qualifier, right?
We
haven't even talked about RNG yet, right? We haven't even talked about RNG.
Oh yeah, if people don't know exactly, RNG is just sat out on the side. That team that literally, like chess masters, just controlled the whole MSI. Yeah, they're just sat going, wish we could get in the Worlds. So they're gonna have to go through like fucking EDG just to win the first game. Yeah,
and brutal, and RNG is a little bit hard to look at because they've only played. It's just the way the LPL. I mean, it's just a stack, and they played in the single elimination stage, and they lost to EDG in that one. And that series was a bot gap, right? So once again, what the matter of rewards? I think Viper is the best AD carry in the LPL, right?
I mean, I think that's not a terribly controversial opinion because he is. When he pops off, like he's like the biggest carry threat on his team, and also, like you say, the biggest carry threat overall. He also just seems to have the best overall champion pool. Like he can play basically every meta ADC champion at a world-class level. And by the way, that's something that there isn't another AD carry in the world who can do that, because you might point at Ruler. Ruler's literally in his entire career never played a professional game on Draven. So, you know,
not really his style, is it? I know
it's not really his style, but Viper is extremely good at every single meta ADC right now.
Mm-hmm. I actually thought that EDG would be winning the LPL, but obviously now they're not winning the LPL, right? But about RNG, this is where the big question marks coming in, and the question is, are they going to qualify for Worlds? Because it's very difficult to tell to get a good read on what's RNG strength coming into this regional gauntlet of sorts, because that series against EDG, I don't think they match up well against EDG, especially in on this current patch, because Viper is just a little bit too good for the way that RNG wants to play the game. So if they are going to qualify, they will have to qualify through either V5 or LNG, and I think that would be the much more interesting match to watch.
By the way, obviously, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you at least watched like the LCK fight. Do you watch LCK much? Do you watch the LCK final?
I watched the Dom 1 versus T1 series and the T1 versus Gen.G set.
Right, obviously, I don't. Again, you're not saying you've got the greatest, but how would you shadow box? Like, is Gen.G the best team in the world for you?
On this patch right now, Gen.G is the best team in the world. Like they take on the right boxes, and they don't have the same problems that JDG has. And I think that they understand the 1-2-2 setup, which seems to be very good on this patch, where it's very good at playing this farm centric style, right? Where at first I was like, everybody's hyping up Gen.G. It's like, well, did Gen.G finally learn how to play the controller map and stuff like that? From the limited games that I've seen, I don't really think they've done that. It's always been classic Gen.G, where they play to dominate the early game, and they use that to then carry them through with the likes of an Azir or some form of getting carry, right? Of course, they did attack the game with the Singed in that game as well. So, but that game was over from the laning phase once certain things happen. Sorry, let me parse my thoughts back together again, right? But I think that currently on the current patch, Gen.G definitely looks like the best team. And more about this 1-2 setup is that instead of like playing to overload side lanes and to play to control the map, what Gen.G does very well is that they form what I call the alarm line, right? Where I think it showed in the third game when T1 was trying to find a pick on the Azir in the bot lane, and the Xin Zhao was there to kind of like spot the moves coming from the opponents, and then they will cut out the opponents slowly, reconsolidate their forces, and it's like, you know, in those movies where it depicts like the was it the the Mongols trying to scale the Great Wall of China, and then somebody lights the torch and everybody likes the torches across the wall. That's kind of how I visualize it when I see Gen.G play, right? They're very good at doing that. They're very good at spotting out the opponent's movement and then reconsolidating their forces to make sure that their side laners are safe. in those scenarios.
Not so sure that South Koreans will appreciate the comparison to the Han Chinese or Mongols, but whatever. It was just an analogy. It was just a harmless metaphor. Exactly.
It was the Chinese getting
right?
invaded by the Mongols, not the
Yeah,
Koreans.
exactly.
No, it's
exactly.
fine.
Don't worry about it.
But it's a cool analogy. I think what's so interesting about Gen.G right now, and I brought this up on the Monty and Wolf show when I talk about LCK, is that Gen.G is like by far the most efficient team in the world when it comes to taking farm on the map. It's actually fucking nuts. Like they're for the regular split, right? The regular season, which has the largest sample size, they were taking 51.6% of lane minions and 57.9% of jungle camps, right? You compare that to the top team in the LPL, which was Top Esports. It was 50.8% for Top Esports of lane percentage. And the next closest team in jungle was JDG with 54.2% of jungle. Now, Gen.G was the top team in the world at both lane and jungle percentage. So it's really what's so incredible about Gen.G right now is that their lane assignments are incredibly good. They don't overextend because they have good vision. So Chovy can just fuck off to a side lane on Azir, push it all the way to the tier 2 relatively safely, recall. And so the longer the game goes on, like the bigger the gold gap gets with Gen.G just because of their efficiency at taking lane minions, denying you waves. It's a real problem to play against Gen.G because you will miss waves. They're just better at controlling the waves on the map. And they take your entire jungle. So you just get yourself into a giant gold deficit. They can do this even when playing from behind, by the way. If you watch some of their games that they've played against Damwon Kia and T1 in the regular season, they can fall to an early game deficit. You combine this with the fact that they are really good at playing the early game too. Like they will just beat you in lane, and then the gold gap just like grows and grows and grows and grows and grows against you. And they are very efficient at team fighting and very good in terms of picks in the current meta. I think you saw this if you watched the LCK finals. You saw this on display, where this is why I thought Gen.G was such a heavy favorite going into those finals, because there isn't a way for T1 to draft against them with the T1 roster. What do you take away from this team? Every time you try and corner them in the draft, they have some way to fuck with you. It's like they're not going to ban the Yuumi because they don't care if you take it, because Lehens will just play Singed and you'll get fucked. And he's won every single professional game of Singed he's ever played. So they have a pocket counter, but you also can't give them the Yuumi because then Ruler just completely dominates the entire game, and Lehens is also very good on the Yuumi. Well, what happens if you ban the Poppy? Well, fortunately, they can flex the Sejuani, which became a ban later in the series, right? Peanut's very cerebral, good on these farming junglers. He's an extremely good decision maker into the game. If you give him early game junglers, he'll kill you in the lane and accelerate Ruler faster into an end game state. If you try and ban out some early game junglers, he can counterpick you. Like, okay, you pick Vi. Well, guess what? He's on Morgana, so get fucked there, right? How do you beat this guy? He was the MVP for a very good reason. He dominated that series from top to bottom. Owner was terrible, but Owner didn't have a choice because Owner couldn't play the mechanical playmaking champions that he had played previously. That wasn't their game plan because Peanut was such a problem with his champion pool. So I don't know where you go against this Gen.G roster. Like the meta has to change, because if you're going to try and play Gen.G with Chovy, who can play Azir, Ari, and Silas, and he gets them for free because you have to ban all this dumb bullshit against Gen.G. Otherwise, they just dominate you in different ways. It's very hard to imagine a draft where they don't win and get exactly what they want.
Well, I actually thought that Damwon would have matched a lot better in the Gen.G in the finals. Like, given that Damwon has always been the most LPL of the LCK teams, right? That's the one LCK team that plays for map control more than the farm efficiency style of play. When it comes to farm efficiency style of play, I think it's like what you've put it, right? Gen.G are the masters of that. They're the best team at playing 3 lanes. They're the best team of understanding, like, this is how we min-max our movement around the map to soak as much farm as possible across the board. And the funny thing is that this actually tells me that this is the same Gen.G that we are going to see in all the previous years, right? They can upgrade and they can like min-max in these areas. They can be even better at laning. They can be even better at team fighting. But the same fatal flaws are still going to exist, that this is a team that doesn't fundamentally understand the map control part of the game. And I'm actually very curious to see if G2, how they match up against G2 at Worlds, right? If the meta changes, if things shift. But right now, is the right meta, is the perfect meta for Gen.G to do well, and it really depends on what happens, how things change up when they go to Worlds itself. I have to say though, like against JDG, Gen.G is gonna eat JDG alive. So if people are gonna do like same thing, JDG, why they're frauds? If they're gonna be the #1 LPL team, #1 LCK team, it's like wow, JDG against Gen.G. In every category, Gen.G is gonna blow JDG out of the water, right? Because the teams that are good against Gen.G style are not JDG. It's gonna be if Top Esports choose to play the map control style, it's probably gonna be V5. It's probably going to be LNG that I think would match up best against them, and possibly EDG as well if Landry decides to play the game.
that has been an issue. Yeah, I can see that. And as to your point, when it came to the playoffs, like we knew that Gen.G was going to pick Live Sandbox in advance because they match up very badly against Dom1 Kia. We talked about this in previous versions of the show and other shows on this channel, but it's like the issue is that Gen.G is just a better version of Live Sandbox, so they should just pick Live Sandbox, even though Live Sandbox might be the second best team when compared to the rest of the field in Korea. But Dom1 Kia presents a lot of problems to Gen.G. Gen.G is very good at playing their own game, but when shit gets weird, they're worse at identifying enemy team win conditions. T1, on the other hand, they themselves are not exactly on meta, but they are really good at looking at a weird enemy team comp and saying, we need to create this vision trap and we need to get this pick right now. This is our win condition to win this game. And they're very good at executing that. So they are a bad matchup for Dom1 Kia, whereas Gen.G sometimes gets a little flustered when strange things happen in games. And you've seen that they've struggled a bit with Dom1 Kia. In fact, probably should have lost to them in the last best of 3 that they played in the regular season, which is why we weren't going to see that. But I think Dom1's an incredibly fascinating team at the current time. You said you watched that series. We talked about how, in theory, Dom1's draft in Game 5 last week versus T1 should have been successful. But again, it was one of those games where T1 realized their win conditions, and Dom1, for all their strengths and versatility and the number of champions they can play and the way they can flex their champions, they themselves are bad at analyzing their win conditions. So they kind of have to just like be better at, they have to hope their enemy team is also bad at analyzing their win conditions in order to win sometimes, which T1 definitely was not.
I think going back to the Game 5, right? Because I did like a whole VOD review worksheet on it, and I give it to my guys here at Maryville to do.
Very
And
interesting.
it's the way I saw it is that I actually liked the draw from Dom1 a lot. But when I was watching the game, I felt that this is something where I think they got too creative. Heimerdinger is something where it's you need to put in a certain amount of practice on this champion, and you need to conceptualize like what is it exactly you want to be doing, right? And when you're looking at the way that Dom1 was taking the fights, I think Showmaker is like is dragging 4 bodies across the finish line at this point of time, right? Cannon's not having a great year. Showmaker's basically trying to drag Dom1 as far as possible.
I mean, Canyon played a lot better in playoffs, but in the regular season, he was pretty bad.
But the Heimerdinger, he's not setting up the turrets in the right place for the vision trap, right? Which is something that T1 did a lot better than Dom1 in the set. And the way that Birdwall was playing the Azir, it felt like he doesn't really know what he's supposed to be doing on the champion, doesn't really know where he's supposed to be positioning.
I mean, what they didn't do is like you have to use the Azir and the Heimerdinger in that comp in order to be first on objectives and control the chokes, and they didn't do that. Neither of those players did that, and they didn't do it as a team. So they were just like you couldn't stack dragons because they were just getting dislodged out of the river, which they should never allow to. That should never happen with that composition, especially with the low range comp that T1 had.
And even when they were first on the objective, like the way that they were positioning was not in the right places to enforce the position that they had. So that's where I felt that this is a team that this is one of those like in theory this is a great draft, but if you don't know how to execute it, then this is where the problem comes in, right?
Yeah. But that's Dom1 in a nutshell, right? It's like a Swiss Army knife, but you don't know actually how to use it. Or I think the coaches know how to use it for all the shit that Danny gets from the fucking fans. Like, now we can criticize Danny because he may be doing things that are too complicated for his players to actually shot call and execute, and maybe that's the flaw. But he does understand what the champion pools are and like how to set up very favorable and unusual draft situations for his team. I thought the draft was very good from Dom1 of that Game 5. I was very sad to see how they actually played it out. But I also think that draft may have worked against Gen.G.
Yeah, I think that's a great draft to play against Gen.G. You have the Heimerdinger that kind of like neutralizes all of this like running into you kind of things, and the Yasuo on the side lane. It definitely has the recipes for success to really hit on the sore points that has been Gen.G's weakness over the past 3 years.
Yeah. And the sad thing is like Damwon would be absolutely fucking amazing if they could execute.
I'm once again with like all this subbing in and out. It sounds like Damwon's in the same camp, like V5 is in, right? You don't even know if they're gonna. Are they guaranteed to qualify for Worlds already?
Damwon?
Oh, then the gauntlet.
No.
Around the gauntlet, right?
But they have 2 chances. Basically, like I think they probably will beat Live Sandbox.
They probably will, just from experience. Come on.
Yeah, Live Sandbox is also like really one-dimensional. Like they're good at what they do, but they're not very complicated, whereas like Damwon has a lot more tricks. So even if they're worse at all of their tricks than Liv is at their one, I think that over a best of 5 they can probably neutralize Liv Sandbox. And even if they lose, they play the winner of DRX versus KT, which is definitely going to be KT because DRX is terrible right now. And so I can't imagine Damwon losing 2 best of 5s to Liv Sandbox and KT. Like they'll win one of those. They only have to win the one.
I mean, when your camp's in chaos, you never know what can happen, right? At the point of time, they're not losing to the opponents; they're losing to themselves.
Yes,
and especially in this meta, where people are just cynically picking the Zeri and Yuumi. If you're gonna lose to yourself, this is a terrible meta to be doing that. This is a terrible meta to be in that position, especially with that game conceptualization, with your mid laner being Showmaker. It's I wouldn't say it's a shoo-in for Damwon, right? But this is
Also,
once again pure speculation.
What does tilt me, because we've already addressed on a past episode that whole like ridiculous thing where there's now like a meta of fans sending the trucks to the fucking Korean team. The reason that also doesn't make sense is there's now 3 teams which have historically dominant. There's the Gen.G one, which is the best by far. There's T1, which is supposed to win, and now down one spot. 2 you can't win anyway. There's only 1 winner each time. So is someone just getting a truck no matter what? Is there always a truck going to someone's house? Like, what are we doing?
What's hilarious about the truck situation? As an aside, first off, I do think we haven't talked about this narrative, but Score winning in his first year as a coach after it took him like 6 or 7 years to win his first title as a player and arguably the greatest jungler.
Don't forget he's even on the team, innit? Yeah, I know.
Is like I'm happy for Score because like finally it came easy to him for once.
Also, think how genius that is. Yeah, if I had Peanut, maybe I might want Score as his coach. Oh, now he's suddenly like mastered actually the complete outplayer to play jungle. Perfect.
Yep,
that's a slam dunk.
So I'm happy for Score, number 1. Number 2, about the truck incidents. What's so funny about the fucking trucks is that so the T1 fans are angry about the coaching situation, but also Faker is the actual coach of that team. So I guess you're just mad at Faker because the whole thing was that Faker, they didn't like the 10-man rotation, and that was bad. It was a bad idea, and it was badly executed. But what happened was, it's not like, guys, Polt isn't the problem. If you think that Polt is the one deciding game strategy, he's fucking not. He's a StarCraft pro and a TFT pro. He's a very intelligent guy, but he's not going to be able to talk to the best player of all time, and certainly the most famous player of all time, and tell him what to do. Like this team is being controlled by Faker. Like that, he is the coach. So if you're sending trucks at Faker. Like, let's be clear about what the actual power structure within this team is. Now, if you're sending trucks at Damwon Kia, you're using results bias to look at the coaching staff, because as we've talked about here and other times, I actually really like the drafting in that best of 5. The fact that they set up the Yasuo Senna, and then at the start of the series, and then on red side, they were able to like hide the Yasuo again and pull out this like crazy composition. The drafting was very creative and very good, I think, from Damwon Kia. Now, did the players suck at using it? Yes. And that could also be a coaching problem, right? Like, do we know that they're picking the compositions that they've practiced or that they understand? Is the coach relaying the right information to the players? But the drafts were not really the issue in that series. In fact, they gave them pretty substantial advantages, in my opinion, and were surprising. So why are you mad at the Damwon Kia coaching when we cannot know if the problem is the coaching, but we do know that the drafts appear to be strong? They're weird, but they're strong. Stop sending trucks. It's stupid.
It's I think about the traditional sports, right? And this is something that I talk about quite a fair bit in terms of like what the role of a coach is of the team. And like when grabs, like the whole like grabs draft meme used to be a thing for G2, is that I would say it's like part of the job scope to thank the flame from the plebs, right? To thank the flame from the fans, right? And it's like in traditional sports as well. When you watch, I watch soccer or football, right? And when a player is playing badly, when the team is losing, very once in a while, yes, fans, if like it's like one player who's like terrible, but the fans are gonna like jeer him and stuff like that. But usually the person they're calling for, they're booing, is usually the general manager instead, right? It's always they're saying stacked in the morning and stuff like that. If when their team is losing and they want the manager out and stuff like that. I mean, of course now these days it's a lot more complicated with the ownership structures and stuff like that. But that used to be the case, right? Where when fans are angry with the team because they can't really discern, right? As fans, they can't really discern like, is this player playing well or not? Yes, sometimes they make an egregious mistake and stuff like that. But in general, when the team is losing, who do they blame? They go for the top dog. They go for the leadership. And I'll say that that's kind of like part of the job. So if it means getting the trucks and stuff like that, it's just an unfortunate conditioning of what have been used to.
I just find it funny, Jensen, that there, especially in T1's case, because it's so abundantly clear who the like actual coach of this team is, that they're like, you need to get former professional players as the coach. Like, your coach is the greatest player of all time. Like you already have that, guys. You know, maybe that's the problem. I'm just gonna put that out there. Maybe it's an issue.
Are you ready for the ultimate?
You don't actually have coaches, and it's a player.
Do you want to know what the biggest punchline of all? And this is truly ironic. Do you know what the first truck was sent for? It was the LS situation. And do you know what the demand of the T1 fans was? That they hire a coach called Dade, who is the coach who's now getting the trucks from the damn one fans. That is so. Also, one, if you're a T1 fan, we did what you wanted. It didn't work. Why are you speaking again? Maybe you shouldn't pick the coach. All you can do is call the truck firm or whatever. And then secondly, if T1 doesn't win Worlds, I'm just going to buy Joe Marsh one of those key rings that says keep on trucking. There you go. There you go.
Also, I am slightly salty. I said this on the watch party that we had, but I was gonna rent my own truck for the T1 semifinal and write a message to the Korean fans to stop being so spoiled when they have like the best, you know, what the greatest legacy of all time and the greatest player of all time on their team. But unfortunately, what happened was Joe Marsh decided to make a bunch of really weird comments on Discord and get into that whole scandal. And I didn't want Korean fans to think that I was defending Joe Marsh in any way.
There you go.
So I was like, great. Now I just lost my opportunity for jokes with trucks because they're actually surprisingly inexpensive. So in the future, I will send trucks, guys, but I couldn't do it this time. God damn it. Next year.
Okay. Because that's the other reason that here's the other thing as well. I at least actually in a weird way get the damn one though, because the problem they have is since they kept Canyon and Showmaker and they got Naguri back, like narratively, if you're the fans, you are supposed to be the dominant team and win everything. It's all so on that one. I at least get the idea. The fan, like Jensen says, they can't see in the server what's going on. So there's like the management must have fucked it up. What are you doing? Right, the T1 one is egregious as fuck though. You even still have a chance to win all these championships and worlds. Like that is just like you're saying. You are just incredibly spoiled. You really think every season your team doesn't have to have a chance to. They have to win. Every single LCK and every Worlds, your team has to win. What? Because you support them, you twat. How about if the players are good enough, if the coach does a good enough job? What, just because you're a fan they're supposed to win? Like, man alive, what is this, your birthday? You a 12-year-old girl? Ah, it's a pink pony. I asked for a purple one. Get it out. Kill it. Like, what the fuck? This is mental, mate. You're the most spoiled fans of all time. And by the way, I really hate that type of a fan. Because here's the thing. As an analyst, by the way, I can judge the scene, like, you know, the business side. I'd be, well, maybe I wouldn't like keep Faker. Maybe I'll play. The difference is, though, if you're just a fan, how are you ever going to talk shit on Faker? How are you ever going to talk shit on T1? Like, they've given you everything. It's like basically, everything. I'll give you the analogy I would give you, Jensen, is a classic soccer one, which is at the end of his time at Arsenal fans used to say Arsene Wenger should get the fuck out. That is mental, mate, because that's basically, by the way, Monty, the equivalent there is like telling Bill Belichick, get the fuck out the Patriots. Like, what did you ever do for us? Like, what? Everything. Literally everything. Like, that's what fans are like, though. That's the problem, unfortunately, the dark side of when you have a lot of success, you get what we call plastic fans who are only there, by the way, way to cheer the person who wins. And then when you lose, they can't ever appreciate like an epic, valiant effort in a loss or any of this shit. Like they can't. They can only understand winning. Unfortunately, that's by definition the worst type of fan. Unfortunately,
I mean, admittedly, it was depressing to see T1 collapse in Game 5 at MSI, but they did also make it to Game 5 at MSI, right?
Yep.
It's not like they were shitters, and the meta did change a little bit before that tournament. And by the way, T1 fans,
it was online. There was all that shit added in. There was so many like fucking circumstantial things you could sort of give them a break for, you know.
Yeah, T1 also still has hands, like very good hands, and we don't know what the world's patch is going to be. I do think it's unlikely that it shifts significantly from this point in time, but even small changes like Zeri kind of falling in priority is probably going to have pretty big effects on the entire meta, because as we discussed earlier, the existence of Zeri is kind of like, she's like a gravitational field that's just like warping everything around her right now. So it could make some changes overall. But if it does change, there is a world where T1 is really good, because if they can play carry tops with Zeus, if Owner can play some of these very mechanical champions and make plays, and Faker has a chance to really support his teammates and like play a more roaming mid lane style, this team's super good again. They're still, I mean,
absolutely,
they're still a good team right now. They're just not. They're probably not top 3, but are they top 5?
They've also got so much time before Worlds. Like, this team could just turn up at Worlds and be like the second or third best. Why not? It's not impossible.
I actually thought that T1 was probably the closest to what I think is the next innovation in terms of like how this meta shifts, right? But like I was saying, that this current meta rewards like this skill and team fighting style, and then Gen.G with this idea, which I think is what most teams are adopting. There's like 1-2-2 and try and catch farm in all 3 lanes. I actually think that if we were to revive the Season 8 RNG, right? Or how G2 was playing with perks in AD carry position, this 2019, right? Season 9 G2, where they played this where they play this style and they funnel all the farm into the AD carry, and you see a 300 CS Zeri or Silver at 20 minutes. I think that might be the next evolution of the meta, where now you're playing into the side lane to secure all this farm, which is actually, funnily enough, what I thought Fnatic was doing throughout most of the regular season. So I think that there's still space to innovate in this meta, and I wouldn't say that things are cast in stone and set in stone to say that this is the correct way to play League of Legends, and that
I don't know if Gubayushi is the dude to do that with, because he just randomly dies, right?
I mean, he means you could obviously also put it through like fucking top lane as well. I assume you can play off that side. The problem is, though, here's the thing, though. I don't want anyone giving credit to Fnatic for that. I don't think Fnatic intentionally chose to not put all the resources into mid and instead to maybe put them in the bot lane. I think that's called Yamato kind of just wants to have a job in 2023. You know, I think he's smart enough to know, like, I need to win a few of these fucking games now.
I mean,
I agree in general, though.
That's definitely so. It's not necessarily the other lanes. It's just very specifically AD carry in this meta, because of how multiplicative goal on the AD carry position with Silver and Zeri is, right? So I remember like the third game Silver was like 300 CS at 24 minutes. So I thought they were the closest to that so far.
The greatest what if of this year is what if Teddy was still on this T1 roster. And like, what if I
said on Twitter, it'd be the shit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this.
Because think about it, what hole would they have in the team? The whole team would just be solid as fuck.
At MSI, when Gumayushi was running it down in the group stage, if they had Teddy, we said this at MSI, if they had Teddy just to sub in, I think that's a very different team. And if they had Teddy this split, and especially in these playoffs, I think it's a really, really different version of T1. Sure. And they didn't decide to keep him around for another year as kind of an alternate AD carry. And as impressive as Gumayushi was on his debut, right? He was a very promising rookie. Yeah. He made some incredibly flashy games on very flashy champions like Samira. His growth has not been amazing, honestly. And it's people always like, oh, you're hating on Gumayushi. Gumayushi's still a good player. It's just that he's not Ruler or Viper, right? And he needs to become Ruler or Viper at some point in time if he's going to stay on this roster.
I mean, that's also because of how Riot has changed the meta, right? Like, I think as AD carry this year, usually you just play like one style and you just play Kai'Sa and Xayah throughout the year, right? But this year you've had to play 3 different styles. You had to play like the Jinx or Fiddles at the start of the year, and midway through you had to swap over to playing this very high pressure Kalista, Draven, and what was Lucian. The one? Lucian, right? and Lucian, and now you have to play Zeri and Sivir. So there's 3 distinct identities of AD carries that you have to play right now, and it's not just you as an AD carry, because this is something that I think a lot of people don't really see, is that yes, the team fighting portion is entirely on you, but how the team sets up around you is something that is less intuitive, and you can't just pick up just straight away and say that this is what I'm going to be needing. And I think usually the trend is that AD carries tend to be the worst in terms of like conceptualizing the game and really communicating with the team, because that has been the most static role. You just played the same champion and you played Kai'Sa and Xayah for the last 5 years.
It also helps that Gumayusi's best performances have come off of Korea either babysitting him with Thresh or playing hard engaged champions, which, you know, the Nautilus was just straight up banned by Gen.G in the finals because they realized that it's not a meta ban, but that was going to be the way that T1 was most annoying, because it enables Korea to engage. And Korea has been very strong on engaged champions and less strong on a lot of enchanters. So it allows him, you know, they really relied on Korea to start many of these fights and to be their primary form of engage, especially because Owner wasn't playing those type of junglers a lot of the time. And Zeus was playing carry tops. So it does seem like it's kind of moved out of their wheelhouse more or less.
The other reason why I would have liked to see Teddy as well is because he is the prototypical AD carry. Like, he will just play safe in the lane. By the way, who'd have an amazing lane with Gary? Then he gets to the team fight and he's going to just consistently DPS while not getting in trouble, let the team peel for him. Gumayusi has come from the fucking Jackie Love tactical fucking, I am going into this fight. He's in that shit. He's in like the Matrix where he's trying to be in bullet time, dodging shit. Like, I hate when this motherfucker goes in. I just know he's going to get blown up immediately. Give me an old school ADC.
I mean, in this meta,
might actually be Gala's struggles as well in RNG, because Gala is a lot closer to Gumayusi, and I'm not sure if he can do the Zeri and Sivir as well.
No, I think the issue with Gala is like Gala is just fabulous on on Kai'Sa, and it feels like you know, Gala just gets a Kai'Sa meta around important international events. He's probably the best Kai'Sa player of all time, but not to say that he has the world's smallest champion pool, but I think he's suffering from not being a great meta for him overall. In the same way that we could say that EG might be suffering because this isn't a good meta for Danny overall either. Gala has pronounced strengths, and that's not what's happening right now.
It's actually crazy to think that the MSI champions might not make worlds.
Well, that was actually something I often talk about on my Discord as well. I've often said the big problem League of Legends has is just that they made MSI. MSI was a great concept. If you have 2 major championships, what it allows is your success in spring can turn into something. But the real problem is this. No matter what they've done, it just does not have the same status. Like, people don't care ultimately. Here's the thing. If you can't have worlds, yeah, then people care about MSI. Like, for example, for G2, it's super prestigious because you're from Europe, etc. The problem is, though, no amount of MSIs for other people seem to count at all towards a world. It's not the big a deal. So the person who's suffered the most is absolutely Xiao Hu, because the problem is there's a reason he's the new king of spring. He's always a fucking god in the spring. He's won all these MSIs, but the problem is he's had a couple of chances at worlds, but he hasn't won it yet. So, like, someone like that, I actually think will be underrated at the end of their career, because if they don't get the worlds to the fan, it's like, how could you be a top one? It's like, mate, look at the guy's rest of his resume. The rest of his resume is like probably like a top 5 resume of all time. What the fuck are you talking about? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And also, the other reason I hate it is because, listen, you could maybe do this in my game, CSGO. In theory, in CSGO, you might be able to be the best in spring and still be the best, because the game's going to stay fairly similar in the meta. The idea you can be the best in like May in League of Legends and then do a load of patches and then be the best in like October and November. No chance. No chance. You have to be the greatest team of all time probably to do that.
Well, it was only the one time that we saw MSI and Worlds won by the same team, and that was 2016 SKT. That's it. I mean, it's really difficult for the same team to stay on top, and I think teams are getting better at it because they've realized. I think one of the key realizations for LoL teams and GMs in the last couple of years has been, well, you can't create a team that you know is going to be good because you don't know what the meta is going to be when you're creating your roster in November, because you haven't seen the preseason changes yet, right? So you have no idea what the game's going to look like for the next year. So you kind of just have to roll the dice and get lucky. The real changes you need to make are between spring and summer after MSI or during MSI, because that's when the meta has more or less settled. It was a little different this year because Riot dropped the durability patch, which was much bigger than the normal patches that they would put in between splits. But at least you have a better idea generally of what the meta is going to look like, generally of what's important, because there probably aren't going to be that many massive meta shifts that happen. You can never know, right? But it's a more informed time to do it than in November. And I'm sure, you know, you've coached a lot of professional teams, Jensen. You can say it's very difficult to assemble rosters when you don't know what the next year of the meta is even remotely going to look like, right?
I mean, I think what you can do is you do your best to assemble a coherent roster, right? Like what Wave War, which is the 7th team in the LPL, did, right? With the Shy and SOFM, I think that's very coherent, where these players line up with one another, but you can never really predict to say that this is a style that will do well. You might just end up like we're talking about right now, right? You want to play a map control style, but it turns out it's a scaling team fight meta at the end of the day. I mean, if you have a coherent style, it's like what Carl says is, right? You are the meta, right? And you can probably still make deep runs, but it's hard to really get across the finish line and beat the team. It's like JDG has a very good shot at winning the LPL.
You know what I love about that as well is like that line also hits even better when you know this is a man who played with Uzi I. So Madly, his philosophy is if you have a style, you are the meta. That sounds like something Uzi I just told him. Like exactly. That was like how he tricked them all and it's raised the puppy every fucking game, innit?
But yeah, like this is why I think that it really behooves teams to be more aggressive in terms of roster movements between spring and summer. And we did see, I don't think, I'm trying to remember, it wasn't entirely their choice for RNG to like swap out the top laner, because I think the trade got recalled or something. I'm not sure how the trade situation works in LPL. But it was interesting to see a top lane change right after becoming MSI champions, right? But we didn't see any roster additions from T1, which I thought was that was intriguing, especially given Gumayusi's form at MSI. I would have tried to at least put somebody on the bench. I think there's a big what if question about Berserker being on T1. I mean, this is going to sound weird, but maybe Berserker would be better than Gumayusi on T1 right now. He's playing in a worse region, so it can sometimes be hard to tell, but he's absolutely carrying Cloud9 in these games, and he looks like he has the meta champion pool that's very applicable. So maybe the harder competition, he would have looked worse, but that's a choice that T1 made to give him up to Cloud9 in the offseason.
By the way, just to finish up that conversation, one thing I'll also say that is wild to me about the LPL, it's why I know that region is totally about like what identity does your team think it has, keyword think, because the other thing that is impossible to do in the LPL, you know, when I had that discussion earlier about the Zoom comment, you almost cannot just trade pieces like this is like the NFL or like soccer or something. If you take a player, like Zoom might look like the best player in the world, put him on another team, maybe he's shit, maybe the bin guy just feeds on RNG, you put him on the other team, he's fucking back again. Like, this is the craziest region ever, I'm telling you, for player trades, completely 180ing the form of the player. And then also, this is why, spoiler, I think LPL, you ready for the most controversial statement ever? I'll say it anyway. Say there's 10 more years of League of Legends. At the end of the 10 years, over the entire history, so it'll be like a 20-year game almost there, LPL will have won the most worlds, more than Korea. Here's why. Because not only do you get these drop-offs and meta patches, like all the things we've just complained about, but here's what they now have that Korea used to have. Now the problem in Korea is people are actually scouting too much of the other good players. People like Berserker don't sit on the T1 bench, they go to another region. The problem there is this, just like the Zoom example, you can actually take out the best top player in the world when he plays shit in the LPL, you can put in your rookie, and your rookie might actually be really good. That Wayward guy was carrying games. So as a result, I think it's the only region where not only are you going to have so many styles tried, one person's going to get lucky and surely like lock into the world's meta, but you also can sort of overcome the issues you're talking about as a GM, Monty. You can actually get lucky, kick a guy, and this is what obviously people like Cloud9 couldn't do in the West. You can't kick out Summit, he was the MVP, but you could do that in China and it might even work. So to me, I think they just have, because they have obviously insanely more players and talent, like they just have an advantage no one else has.
It's the competition for the roster slots.
Yes.
And people will forget this, or frankly, probably a lot of people who are younger would never even know this fact, but in the days in like 2014 and 2015, the problem with China was not depth of talent. The problem with China was that there was basically a streaming war that was going on, where there were all these new streaming companies that were throwing around a fuck ton of investment money at various players on these professional teams, right? So the streaming companies were paying the players oftentimes more than the team was. So their main loyalty was to like being famous and streaming. And they became so famous as a result of these streaming services that they couldn't actually be removed from these rosters without like crippling the team's ability to get sponsorships. So there was fake money basically being thrown around because they were paying inflated salaries because there was bidding wars for these players on the streaming services. Eventually, those streaming services started to consolidate or die. Some of them just straight up died. The streaming money ended up going down. And that's when you actually saw LPL start to improve as a region, because all of a sudden, the teams were paying more than the streaming services again, so they actually had control over the situation. It's similar to what happened in the era of the CS:GO betting scandal, where betting companies, like the skin betting companies, were paying CS:GO players more than their team salaries, so they were focused on streaming and advertising for the CS:GO betting rather than actually performance, right? It was a huge problem in CS:GO. It was a huge problem in Chinese League of Legends. And now that performance is God again, you have this insane level of competition where people are hungry. And that's one of the problems that you see in the West is like, this guy is going to be guaranteed a spot because of his name, no matter what. And there is nobody there who can actually overtake him. There is nobody hungrier to replace him with who's going to offer a similar level of performance. But the churn of seeing new good players in the LPL is obviously much higher. Wayward is a very good example.
I mean, the redundancy that's built into the LPL is one of the reasons, right? Like, I mean, people always talk about the LPL practice schedule and stuff like that, right? Let's be real here, right? Not all of those players are doing it, but it's because they have this sheer set of numbers. Is that when somebody says that, okay, I'm tired, I'm tilted or whatsoever, they can get somebody from the academy team to go and play with the rest of the team, and then to just continue the scrim set with that. So when people talk about like these 16-hour LPL schedules, it's not that all 16 players, it's not that all 5 players are practicing 16 hours a week. It's that, sorry, 16 hours a day, not a week. 16 hours a week is ridiculously low. Sorry. But point I'm trying to make is that because of the sheer amount of talent that they have in the LPL, they have built the system for redundancy so that they enable the team to train at the pace of your outliers, right? Your Doan Bees and stuff like that who want to be playing 16 hours, want to be scrimming triple blocks a day and stuff like that. And whereas in the West, you can't really seem to do that because all these teams have is like, let's be real here, right? Like in the LCS, the academy teams are basically a bench for the LCS team, but they don't have the depth go all the way down. And then it's like what we're saying, you know, when they bench Alfari and then they put on Jenkins. Let's be real here, right? That's not someone who's like, yeah, it's like going from I mean, actually, to be fair, in the LPL is like something similar as well, right? When like LNG went from like LA to Panda C, right? But the thing is, the Panda C at some point of time, he's actually scrimming with the team already, and they have this sort of like building redundancy to help them deal with this. I actually think that like moving more towards unless Riot changed like the 2-patch system and the way that they construct the game, moving more towards a 10-man roster or even say an expansion in terms of the way draft is done for League of Legends is probably healthier for the scene and for pros, and actually helps GMs and teams hatch against the ever volatile shift of the game, right? Where you can be playing one meta in spring and a different meta in summer. So maybe T1 had the right idea with running a 10-man roster as well. It's just that the 10-man has to be communicated and handled in a much different way and with much different player expectations as well. Like every other sports team in the world, they have 30 players ready to play, although it's only 5 on the pitch at the same time, right? Five on the court at a certain point of time. Only League of Legends is the only thing, if we are to talk about it as a sport, where there's like close to zero redundancy as compared to what we have in terms of traditional sports.
Yeah, that redundancy is very important because it keeps people motivated. That's if somebody's constantly gunning for your spot and you know that, it's an entirely different level of motivation. And like, I don't care who the fuck you are, you could be the most motivated person in the world, you're still going to be more motivated when somebody's on the bench right behind you. That's just true.
Of course. You know, I don't know if people know that story. Sadly, I'm not an American baseball fan, so you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, Monty. But I'm almost sure.
I'm not a baseball fan, but go ahead.
This is the most famous player of all time. You might know the story. Do you know that player, Lou Gehrig?
Yes.
As far as I know, I think I'm thinking of the right player. He's someone who like just came in to replace a different player in a game and then just took that guy's spot forever and had like the Iron Man record. Well, or maybe it was like the guy, who's the other one who had the Iron Man record, the Clay, whatever his name. There was some guy where the story was, it was exactly like this. He just replaced a guy in one game and took that guy's spot forever and was just a Hall of Famer. Like, the difference is that doesn't happen in the West. Like, the story he gave there, nobody really thought Jenkins was going to be like, maybe he's just a new starter over Alfari. It was just like, the question is always, when does Alfari come back? When does Sven come back instead of King? You know, that's the difference, is you don't know that the Wayward guy is going to be better than Zoom, but it's possible. That's at least in the scope. And as he says, you've also used him in scrims as if he could one day be. The difference is the Jenkins guy, whether they gave him a scrim or not, he really was just dropped in the deep end, wasn't he? It was just like, right, sink or swim, mate. It's like, and the worst thing is there, you're only replacing because that guy sucked. They also sometimes, I mean, this happens, to be fair, in Korea, if they have a good sub, they'll also put you in if you're just outplaying the guy that you're in front of. Because, as you say, Monty, the reason I gave the baseball example is because that just shows that you can never take for granted your spot. You can't just be like, this guy's just replacing me for this game. No, not if they actually properly coach them. Like, if he's better than you, he's got your spot. But in the West, we don't have that. Like, we still have this whole thing of superstars are superstars, and they are at a protected status. And also, I actually think, no joke, Monty, one thing they cannot do in the West, even though they waste money in every other regard, they can't stomach benching a really highly paid player that's like the mega import in LCS. They can't just never play him. Even if he sucks and was really egregiously bad, in their brain, I think they're like, oh, but I've got to play him because I paid the money. It's like, you've already paid the money, mate. Now you just need to win the games. Like, bench this cunt.
It also just makes it impossible to sign sponsors because there is no loyalty for the most part to the teams. The loyalty is all to the big names of the players. So even if you want to do the best thing for your team and bring in new players on your roster that you think are going to perform better, your org may not let you do that because if you lose this big name player or they're not playing, then all of your sponsors are not going to renew their contracts because then your new team has like 1,000 total combined Twitter followers and there isn't a loyalty to your brand, right? There's just a loyalty to the big name player. It's hard.
Oh, by the way, I looked it up. I was actually right. It was actually that Lou Gehrig guy. What happened was there was a guy called Wally Pipp playing for the Yankees. And then basically he just got replaced in a famous game. And then the Gehrig guy got like 3 hits. And then basically after that, like, no one gave a shit. And it's just this guy all the way. And this other fucking guy's like, oh, well, and goodbye. I've like Uchi back to his planet or something, mate. I know.
There is a League of Legends equivalent of that, right? That was like Wupo and SOAS.
Oh, true.
Yep.
Wild Turtle also did that to Chaox.
I'll tell you the worst one. Do you want to know the worst one of all time? Because this hurts me deep inside. It's actually what happened to Name. A lot of people don't know this. They all think if they don't watch the LPL, this is how I know none of them watch the LPL, mate. They all think Name never played again after Season 4 Worlds. No, it's worse than that. He was on the RNG with Mata. They were literally in a playoff series. They just lost a game. They subbed the Whoosh guy in, and then they never played him ever again. And they went to the MSI final, semi-final, like after that. Like, that's the craziest one. That was a guy who was an all-time great player, and he just gone after that. I was like, no. And then and of all the people, Whoosh, the fucking guy that Monty made fun of on that stream for one of the worst fucking players of all time at an MSI. That motherfucker replaced him. That's what I mean, exactly. It's not like if I'd have said like, and then it came, you're going to know this name, Jackie Love. It's like, that's a fine story. The Whoosh guy, that is absolutely a disgrace. I want to go back in a DeLorean and just tell Nami, like, listen, mate, 1, stop fucking all those fangirls. Oh, sorry, I mean, 2, don't ask how I know that. And then 2, please just play properly in this next game. He was only playing like Sivir as well. I know. How'd you get fucking benched for that?
All right. Do you have any before we go, Jensen? Do you have any thoughts on any of the LCS?
What you should do? You have
LEC teams?
Use your model to give us some predictions for LCS or LEC. Either if you're watching either. So give us some predictions using your approach.
I think these games in both LCS and LEC have been fucking terrible. Like the last.
By the way, spoiler: here's the bad thing. It's good. It's good. You're going to get on talk shows because people like me find it interesting. Spoiler though: you are setting yourself up for a world of hurt because what you're doing, I actually think it's a good style of analysis, but it's exactly what's gotten the LSs of the world in trouble. Because what's going to happen is you're going to one day see a stylistic matchup where stylistically this Team A can beat Team B, but just like the LS example, the Rogue TSM one back in the day, if those two teams are too far apart, every fan's just going to think you're hating, sadly. So that's just, you got to just accept that if you're going to do this approach. Come on, give us some predictions. Who do you have winning?
I mean, usually that's the reason why I only do this approach when it comes to Worlds, right? When teams are more or less like, these are teams that are not going to fall apart at the seams.
Yes.
So when it comes to regional playoffs, I don't watch so much LCS, but in terms of like everything we talked about, right? I think the 100 Thieves are set up to do well. I haven't seen the C9 game, so I know I've seen the clips, the interviews where they say that, yep, when teams approach the playoffs in NA, we pick Ornn. Ornn is the CEO of the LCS. We pick Seraphine, right? Because they know the Mystic Reduction has always been the way to win the LCS. I mean, EG winning Spring was an anomaly. Right? That was an anomaly. So
yes, playing for late game scenarios where both of you just sit around and like have the biggest CC possible is the way to win LCS. Tragically, like it's not a proactive region. It's not a punishing region. It's a handshake until we Seraphine ult you region.
So my model doesn't apply to the LCS at all because no one really tries to learn that style. I think EG was probably the closest to that. And like I said, all the teams that were played similar to my model of League of Legends over this past weekend, they all lost, right? Team that could somewhat close, but they also went into like the scaling, Big Seraphim, Big Zillion, so dead to me, right? And the LEC side, if what I'm saying is true, that teams that follow this model are not going to do well, it means that Rogue is going to win. But I actually think the G2 is
fucking dare you. Come on.
I actually think that G2 is just much better. And I still think that there's still ways for map control teams to win the game. Like I said, this Renekton pick is going to be a big factor in terms of how G2 really takes these teams apart, right? Because I don't think that Rogue is on the level of Gen.G. And like I said, I honestly still think that G2 will still stylistically match up really well into Gen.G. So even if in this meta, if we were to play on this patch, as much as I say that Gen.G is the favorite to win, which is in other words Rogue, or rather Rogue is Gen.G light, I still think that G2, the way that they play, the way they understand the game, and how clutch Caps and Yankos have always been when it comes to playoffs and stuff like that, they still are doing the right things. It's not to say that the mid game and map control doesn't matter at all. It's just that you can outweigh these style of things, and the burden of execution has gone up that much higher. But I just think that G2 is that good where they're able to play the pressure through the bot lane, they're able to execute the mid lane, in the mid game, and they should still be able to take the series overall. They might probably just drop a game or two like they did against Misfits, right? Once again, they got outskilled by the Kali and stuff like that. So they will drop a game or two, but I still think that G2 would win overall. And I initially had G2, XL, and Mad as my 1, 2, 3. But now that I've seen more of the meta, more of the playoffs, I would think that it's going to be G2 Rogue, G2 Rogue 1 and 2, and maybe even Fnatic actually sneaks in there.
You have them beating Misfits?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked into their matchup, so I can't really tell. I think both teams are going to play the skill, and when it comes down to team fights, depends on how the draft goes. I still think that Humanoid and Upset have the clutch factor with Vateo, but Vateo might be able to carry as well, and depends on where the Yuumi goes, you know?
I think the Yuumi's going to be banned. Yeah, I think Fnatic learned that mistake in the tiebreaker game they played against Misfits. But I guess like I see that Misfits is a more one-dimensional team, so I think probably Fnatic takes it. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game, but I do think, you know, also if Misfits doesn't have a lot to play for right now with the situation that's coming down with their change in ownership. So the stakes are higher, I think, for Fnatic, and they should be able to pull it out, but can be a little bit tough to predict. Predicting LEC recently has not been fun. Just like predicting LPL has been super not fun. I wouldn't dare to predict that LPL regional qualifier. That seems really fucking hard.
I mean, the hardest part is that nobody knows what RNG looks like at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's been weeks. Yeah, sure.
So if you have to pick a winner, you'd say G2 for LEC. Do you think that there's any possibility that EG gets their shit together to win LCS, or is it 100 Thieves for you? What are your thoughts?
This is the weakness of like same thing with Gumayushi, right? Like going with Jojo, I like the direction the EG is going with, but it's like what Thorin was saying, right? It's kind of an unfair comparison because it's not like a 1-for-1 saying that which player is better. It's just that Jojo, given the model that Peter wants to play the game, was better for what they wanted to do. It's just that what they want to do it's harder to do right now. So Ornn, Seraphine, and then mid lane you probably want to play Azure Orianna. This is the Exodia of any, right? Ornn, Orianna, and Jinx, or in this case Zeri, and you just play as like, nope, let's skill a clock, right? So it's gonna be tough. Maybe they find some pick that can attack the meta. Maybe they open up the Doinb secret book of dark arts and they stop playing the Renekton mid and they try to play this map control style. But even then, I will root because in principle, I still like that way they play League of Legends. Because if you play the other way of League of Legends, it's like what I think you guys talked about. But if the LS view of the game was the correct way to play the game, the game would be so unwatchable because nothing would matter until 40 minutes, and the Soraka's just healing people until somebody runs out of mana or something, and it's like one team fight just ends the game, right? I think wasn't that what happened between EG and C9 in the fourth game? That's what people told me, It's like just one team fight and the game's over, right?
Yep.
It's 0-0, 35 minutes, yep, and skill clock, and the 80 carry got caught up. The game's over. Right? Nothing mattered in this game, So in principle, I'm rooting for EG. I want them to win. But the cynical side of me says that I think 100 Thieves wins it. Like Reaper has been the one. I think Sven came on the show and said that he's the one who said that pick Ornn. Man who wants to win picks Ornn in LCS, right? And I think if C9 is doing that as well, then it's like, yep, we'll see you guys caught, And if what we are saying is true, that Berserker is like hyper carry, AD carry, maybe C9's the favorite to win, but I haven't done the legwork to really call a winner on that.
That's fair. Well, we're going to take some viewer questions, Jensen. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. Appreciate talking about LPL and LCK because we haven't done that a lot, but this was definitely the best week to do that. Obviously, with the LPL finals coming up, regional gauntlets, etc. And we will also continue to chat about that. But I think we'll head back and talk more about some of the later stages of the LEC and LCS playoffs this next week. We are going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with viewer questions.
Right, we're back for viewer questions. So as usual, if you don't know what those are, they are generated by the GROGcoin, not literally people viewing Twitch now, because obviously it's actually primarily a VOD format, even though we do it live. So if you want to ask a question here, you have to do it via our Discord, which is the Insight and Esports Discord. And you just go to the GROGcoin Lounge. There's a pinned tweet. It'll tell you a post. It'll tell you everything you need to know about buying the coins. You get 25 of them, you can ask a question.
Yep, that's how it goes. So we'll get right into it. What films would you consider to be objectively amazing, but you did not personally enjoy, such as Thorin mentioned A Tree of Life? I don't know what that movie is.
Yeah. It's the Terrence Malick movie with Brad Pitt and Jessica Chastain or whatever, where it's sort of like, it's like he's on the one hand using like a metaphor of like the entire universe being created and stuff, but then also it's like a family in like sort of 1950s America, sort of their personal melodrama playing out. Again, the problem with that movie is like, essentially, as you can tell, the ambition of it's like incredible, but it's like, yeah, some parts are good. It's more like an experience, that movie, than a traditional narrative, if you know what I mean.
Here's a hot take for you. Some people consider it the best movie of all time, Citizen Kane. Not really my favorite movie. I understand why it's good, and I can appreciate why it's good, but do I personally enjoy it very much? No.
I think it's a banger, that movie. I think it's one of the few really old ones that really holds up. It's mega.
All right. A new Worlds tournament is drawing near. This means
we haven't even answered the question. I did. Let me think of mine then. What would mine be for that? I've already said it in the past ones. I won't go into the reasons why, but I'll say that fucking, I don't, who actually is the person who made it? It's the one, the Mad Max Fury Road or whatever the fuck. Like, I can see the way it's shot and all the graphics are all great. The color palette's great and everything. I just wasn't a fan of the story. Just wasn't that interested in the premise. So that seems like a pretty high production movie, though. There you go. Oh, this guy did the original one then, I guess. Okay, fair
enough. A new Worlds tournament is drawing near. This means another Rumble stage that no one cares about. Rather than talk about something no one cares about, what do you think about the idea of having an episode on the history of the dade award? I feel very good about that. Similar to the MSI episode with Dom talking about goats. I don't know if we do it instead of play-ins, because some people play-ins are kind of fun because we get to see teams just like beat up on people, and they have their funny moments and are entertaining. And as Jensen pointed out, and I hadn't thought about, one of the major region teams is not going to make it out of play-ins this world, which is also funny. Guaranteed to not make it out because there are just not enough slots. But
I would also say, to me, the angle that no one bothers mentioning during Worlds, because it just depresses you, is because you're all obsessed with the gap closing between NA and EU and Korea and China. You all ignore that the reason the Rumble stage actually got interesting is the other way around. The gap closed between like Japan and America and fucking Turkey and America and it's like Vietnam. Like that's what really closed. Like, so as a result, those playing stages also, it's also the years have gone, Monty, where it's a slam dunk that you just win if you're the best team, etc. There's always like one or two BO1 upsets or someone gets in danger in the BO5. Like I feel like there's way more tension in those than people sort of give them credit for, because when they first introduced it, it just seemed easy who'd win.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to do more off-season content in general. And I think we will this year because we have higher motivation to do it because we're starting to build up this big content engine, and you guys are going to see a new brand soon because Insight and Esports is a terrible brand that Thor and I came up with off the cuff, basically to create this channel with for content without actually thinking about it. So I think we will do more off-season content this year, right? And this is a good idea for that.
I mean, I would even say in the long run, like this year it might be off season. I would have it so in the long run, I would just do this parallel to the season. Like I've never understood the logic of like I'm only allowed to talk about week 4 of LEC. Why the fuck would that? So something that's not even interesting. Sometimes you have that week where it's just all upset games.
I mean,
shit.
But I think this particular piece of content with the dade award, we'll want to talk about the latest Worlds, which will require Worlds to be over before we can actually say if there is one. Because remember, we're the only people who can give the dade award out because we invented it, and it's not every year.
That's what I don't get. You know, when they go, all you invented is just well, then don't call yours dade award. Why is that so hard? If it's not that big a deal, why not just make up your own cool name? And also, spoiler, if we're so irrelevant, why the fuck are you using our name from like 2014 or something, you wankers? We made that 8 years ago.
2013.
I know, come up with some shit of your own, for fuck's sake.
Which do you think is hardest? Winning the old school LCK/OGN championship, winning the modern LPL championship, or Thorin after watching upset hard carry in the LEC Super Week this summer? Which is the hardest? I think
I'm going for B.
You think B? I don't know.
LPL, the modern LPL.
I think that the 2014 LCK was such an insane concentration of talent that is very difficult. But
yeah, but the problem is you can like get out of your group by winning 2 BO1s. There's one factor.
The format makes it a lot harder to win LPL.
The playoff format of the LPL is fucking nuts. It's really,
really good.
It's legit, isn't it? I like that a lot.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think it's not necessarily because of the concentration of talent, which is also very high, obviously, in the LPL, but the format is so much better that it's probably harder to win that. You could KT rollster arrows your way into a title.
I don't think you could in the LPL, exactly, yes. I don't. You'd have to win too many BO5s, wouldn't you? There's no way you'd be able to do it. Yeah.
The problem with that argument is that if I'm arguing that was the most competitive year and KT arrows won,
not a great look,
it's not a great look. It's not a great look for the format. What are your thoughts on hidden mechanics for the viewers? I.e., at some point, bot turret was more durable, but there was no way to visualize it. I mean, I think they're garbage, but the reason why hidden mechanics exist is because pros were doing lane swaps, so we had to do dumb shit to top tower that isn't relevant to normal games, but is only relevant to the professional scene. I don't agree with any of this. I don't agree with any of those changes that they made. I don't think the professional game needs to be similar to the solo queue game. I don't watch esports because I want to play that, go and play that same game in solo queue. I watch esports because I find it intellectually stimulating to watch the professional players be creative. However, I recognize I am not in the majority in that mindset, so they will make invisible mechanics, but I don't like them.
I mean, with that said, they're not exactly killing the viewership record now, are they? So who knows?
That's also fair. That's also fair. What are your favorite types of antagonists in fiction? I don't know if I have a favorite.
The obvious answer to me is basically, I mean, the problem with this is just all the characters in Game of Thrones are like this, so it becomes a bit one-dimensional in Game of Thrones. It's the idea that, like, the person isn't a good person. They will do something horrible, like betray you, kill someone, rape someone. But the idea is either there's still like a possibility in a different context they could be redeemed, a la like the Hound in Game of Thrones, for example.
Darth Vader.
Or you just find out earlier that there was some like actually very good reason they sort of became so fucked up and actually made. I mean, listen, again, this is why in Game of Thrones is a bit one-dimensional, because they do it too much like that, and every villain becomes that by the end. But like, if you do it well, because essentially, I've always said, this is a controversial comic book opinion, by the way, most people, believe it or not, love the DC comic book villains like Lex Luthor and the Joker, and they think they're the best ones, right? I think the Marvel ones destroy them for villains, because their villains are all like tragic anti-hero villain type characters. Like Doctor Doom is only fucked up because he's the like dictator of his own. He's the dictator of his own. He's the dictator of his own state. So obviously, as someone from a different country, you would have a different perspective on that, and he would have a different sense of what rulership means. Stuff. Obviously, Magneto he was literally in a concentration camp because of humans hating his guy. He has a very valid reason as to why he might not be trustful. And spoiler, if you ever watch the X-Men universe, here's the part I don't get. The Charles Xavier guy's wrong every single movie. The Magneto guy's right every single movie. Am I missing something? The Xavier guy's like, no, we can talk to them and they'll protect us. And then literally, like the next movie, they like put him in camps, coming for children. Like, so the Magneto guy was right. Now here's the problem. Yeah, maybe the Magneto guy's idea of don't just kill everyone. That's the problem, is there. So then there's aim as well. Mate, most of them are like that. Most of them are fucking fire in the Marvel universe.
That's also my hot take about superhero movies, is I actually think X-Men Days of Future Past is the best superhero movie of all time.
It's mega.
Because it actually shows, first off, it's Xavier and Magneto teaming up in the future, has great, really cool action sequences with all of their mutants using their powers together, and I think shows 3 really different but all super valid viewpoints about how that situation
it's
can
an
be
actual
handled.
philosophical sort of play out. Yeah, exactly.
You have 3 viewpoints, not just 2, because you have the Mystique viewpoint, you have the Xavier viewpoint, and you have the Magneto viewpoint. That movie is fucking good. It's really good.
I swear, tell you what, I don't miss, mate, because what you might not know is I actually sent Monty a WhatsApp message after I saw that movie in the cinema, and my WhatsApp message, you can go back and check, just said that was actually legitimately like one of the best movies I've seen, not just comic book movies. I actually did say that.
Yeah,
it holds up as well. That's a fucking really good
People are
one.
all hung up on fucking Christopher Nolan Batman, but the real banger was X-Men Days of Future Past, which also hilariously, because the next movie, the X-Men Apocalypse, was fucking horrible. So that was disappointing.
It did ruin it for sure. Yeah,
that was really bad. What are the principles of good storytelling, and how many are there? Interesting question. I mean, there's basically an infinite number, because the thing, I don't know. I think if you want to talk about principles of good storytelling, I tend to be very essentialist, and I would go back to like Joseph Campbell and like the hero's journey. There are specific structures that really are quite pleasing to the human brain and that people really identify with and speak to Jungian, essential principles, basically, and essential human archetypes. So I would go back to that and look at that as the building blocks. And there's a lot of ways to riff on that. There's basically an infinite number of ways to riff on it, but there are certain principles that I think are very strong that Joseph Campbell was very smart to identify and outline.
I don't really have an answer for this one. Next.
You are organizing the greatest LoL show match, WWE style of all time. Okay, so we can script it. Who do you pick and who wins? And if the teams chosen for this hypothetical match are different than your all-time 2 best teams, what storylines are missing in comparison? Oh no, you wouldn't pick the 2 best teams. You'd pick some wacky ass shit, I think.
That's actually, by the way, where everyone ruins esports show matches. The show matches either these were teams that were really good 7 years ago, but who would want to watch them play now? They don't even play professionally, or some of them don't play at all. Like, I've never, if you don't know, by the way, fans, you're all thinking, what are you talking about? Those happen all the time in Asia to this day. They fly out the legendary players, they have stupid show matches that are just, they're not even good quality matches, because it is just like watching a modern day, like, diamond player play against someone else. It's just his name's Expeke now. Like, but it's not Expeke that you're thinking of. So I always wonder, what purpose does that show match play? And then in Counter-Strike, we have the worst of all time, dude, because they try exactly what you're saying. They try to get the biggest name player they can for both teams, and then they just play a normal match. So it's just a bad matchmaking game, basically. There's no theme. There's no special setups of rivalries and tries. It just becomes a bad game. If you don't know, this is why famously even the NBA All-Star game changed up the format, because it's supposed to be a fun game, not a serious game. But if you want to be serious, you got to do the teams differently. So essentially, as Monty says, I would make it all around the narratives if I can decide the players. Like, for example, they've got to have something like probably like Doublelift versus Bjergsen or something, you know, like some angle like that. Like you try to be all the fun ones like that.
No. I got the ultimate one. Here's the one that everybody would fucking watch no matter what. You have Faker versus Apto in an actual stage match. So Faker versus the dark Faker that he never actually got to play on stage and who was banned. Like the narratives you could build around that would be fucking insane. So I would definitely do that. I think you have to have Doublelift in there for the trash
showmanship and all that.
Yeah, the showmanship. I think you could really do some fun stuff with him. Like other big
but Forgiven would obviously be a fun one if you want to just make it ridiculous. By the way, just the idea of like Forgiven after the game being like, the fucking mid just fed. It's like, that's fake. You know what I mean? Already you can see how that could just be amazing, couldn't it? I
know. that would be really fun. Having other big personalities like Imp is another one that would be super fun to see in that kind of context. I'd love to see the Diamond procs come back for some crazy jungling. I think you have to have Flame in the top lane just because he's got the looks right, and that's like a legacy callback.
If we're doing a show match though, Insect has to play jungle. Jungle. Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. And I don't care how old he is. He can actually come back tomorrow.
Also, Insect versus Diamond Proc is actually a fucking banging story from some of those old IEM events and stuff like that. So that would be like a really good callback matchup.
These are all huge personalities. Maybe the other top laners like MacNoon or something.
Oh, MacNoon would be good. Yeah.
Because these are people, if you haven't noticed the angle, even if they're shit at the game, they're going to just deliver with the personality, aren't they? And there's the pre-made rivalries and narratives.
But I think you focus it around because you want to give somebody like the narrative nobody's ever seen is Faker versus Apto / Dopa, whatever you want to call him. That's like the big question mark of League history that I think I'm going to say really is attack.
The only show match I actually enjoyed was obviously, it wasn't quite a show match. It was more like an exhibition tournament. And it was obviously when Faker went 1v1 against Froggen in the Anivia matchup and Froggen won. Just by farming. Are you ready? Just by farming. Chef's kiss. That was one of the greatest moments. That was just amazing. I remember because the fact he just won by farming to hit the minion. Because you know the whole premise there is you always get the kill, don't you, in the 1v1? Because they were on Anivia and it's Frog, and he was like, I'm just going to hit the minion count. And he just won from that. Brilliant. Love it.
Who is your favorite lolcow in esports, both current and all time?
You know what this term means, Monty?
No.
LOLcow is essentially like what I am to people who are walking esports. Like the idea is you follow my Twitter intentionally, like as a guilty pleasure, because I just say stupid shit all the time. That would be the premise. So in this particular case, like for us, it's essentially who is like the idiot. Like, so for example, even though this isn't actually who I would pick, fans are going to think we're going to pick like Freak or something, you know, it's like, oh, it's just saying silly stuff. That's more like Dom would think Freak was his LOLcow. But who would yours be basically?
I mean, Locodoco is like obvious.
It's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good one. Like the joke is you actually do want him in your life, even if you weren't friends with him, just to see all the fucked up shit he's going to do and how he's going to mess up and silly things he's going to say.
He is just such a hilarious person that, and I say this as somebody who likes Locodoco, right?
He's awesome.
But I mean, he's really entertaining in terms of everything. And like, I mean, just look at like that crushed hearts, broken dreams thing he did. I mean, it's just perfect. It's just perfect.
He also has this really weird quality to him that a fan maybe won't understand. But if you get what I say by this, it makes his entire personality make sense. He has certain things he is really good at. But then anything that he isn't really good at, the drop off is insane. Like he's either really good at something or he has no clue whatsoever. So as a result, you can imagine the hilarity that ensues with all the different settings you can be in.
I mean, the current one has to be Doublelift. Like this is just like the endless.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he has become my guilty pleasure. I can't lie. Like the joke is, normally I have a really hard time making myself watch other people's content just because of the amount of time it takes to do my content. But mate, I'll sit down sometimes and watch. Like for example, I've told the story, but I watched that whole fucking thing of him analyzing like the fucking Peter Zhang statement because it was like, mate, buckle in for this. This is going to be like the fucking alternate dimension stream or what's going on here. Like it's amazing, isn't it? I know. The joke is, I don't want him to stop doing those podcasts. Please keep doing them.
It is like Doublelift has arrived from a parallel universe where the facts are entirely different, and it's like he's telling the truth of what happened in an alternate timeline. It's fucking weird to listen to him because like the fans don't know what actually happened. But people, I mean, I've had him tell stories about parts of my life where I was there, and I was like, "This is
it's mental in it, yeah.
This is your take on it? Like, what the fuck?"
That also appears to be what that podcast is, dude. People just go on there and tell like alternate, like I'll give you an example. You might know this. When Jensen went on one of the episodes, it was the episode where he was actually on with, who was he on with? He was on with someone else from like LCS at the same time. Maybe he was like Caps or Perks or something. It was some like other really famous player, right? So it was Jensen and someone else. And basically, Jensen like implied Monty. He had no problems with Jat and that everything was fine. And like basically like sort of low key threw me under the bus of like, oh, maybe Thorin made it all up. Like, here's all I'll tell you about that. Jensen, you'll never try that on any of my shows. I'll have you on my shows, homie. Don't worry about that. I'll do interviews with you. You'll never bring that topic up and you'll never express that opinion. Just going to promise you that right now. Just a promise for you. Just between you and me, mate. So all I'll say is, my problem is, because Doublelift himself knows nothing about his story, he's just like, wow, really, Joe? So that is what happened in T1. Well, you learn a new thing every day, friends. Anyway, and then coming up next after the break is like, come on, man, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's definitely the number one lolcow. Yeah, he deserves that. He deserves that stage.
How good was?
By the way, I'll just. Here's one thing I can't make the mistake of though, because I had this joke on Twitter, so I've got to keep it here for history. This is a very careful. Here's what I've told you this before, Monty. The way I knew it became really unfair, the way people treat me in esports, is if you actually want to find a statement I've said that like the words could get you in trouble, you have to go back to like 2016, mate. All the shit recently is just like I'm like Dennis Rodman. I've got a rep that I'm an arsehole. So if I do anything, the ref throws me out the game. So the problem is, right, in the last few years, I've actually gotten amazing at going up to the line. I never go over the line. So watch the master at work. Watch this tightrope performance. I'm just waiting for the episode of Doublelift's Trash Talk podcast that'll feature Whippo and Nemesis. You know, a pair of fake tits and Doublelift. So business as usual around there. Straight fire. That's a 10 out of 10 execution. Straight fire. Next.
That is
pretty good. That was pretty good. That's pretty good.
How good was Locodoco as a player? I mean, he was pretty good.
It was pretty good. If you don't know, this is actually a part. I mean, I made a whole article about him, so I've told this story before. But for modern fans, the problem he has is this: because his personality is so memeable, and crucially, because when he left the teams of ADC and swapped to support and played with Doublelift, from that moment on, as a player, he was just a meme. Whereas if you don't know, the reason Loco was so famous is because at the beginning he was one of the best ADCs, and he was like a fucking shot caller and like trained some of his teammates, and he not only was really good, he was one of the first people to be good on camera. So every single time, if you remember, Monty, in those seasons before you were there, if you watched the VOD, they would always flash to a local reaction shot after something. So essentially, like, he actually was really set up to be a big star in the early days. People don't know. So, like, sadly, he'll never get his flowers now, but he was a good player actually in like season 2 or whatever. At one point he was a good ADC.
Yep, I agree. What books would you like to be able to read in their native language? I think we've answered this one before, but like Russian literature, yes. Number one, I really wish I could read in its original language because Russian speakers speak very highly of the differences, positive differences of reading it in Russian compared to in English. So, you know, authors like Tolstoy, I would really like to be able to read in Russian. Also, Chinese poetry, just because it's so different when you translate it, and a lot of the nuance I think is lost. I would like to read both of those things if I could in their native language.
I mean, I already said the same thing. It's like Dostoevsky or whatever. There you go.
Yeah. What players and in what year do you think has had the highest individual peak for each role?
Ooh, each role. Right. Okay.
I think this is a video question. This is another good video, which is like, what is the peak AD carry year? What is the peak like mid lane year? I don't know if we're going to do this now, because this is like, I would have to think about it a lot and like look at every world's performance.
It's a good off-season topic though. Someone write that down, producer.
That's a really good video. That's a really good video. So
that might even be a Dom one as well. We'll see.
Yeah. That's a really good video. So congrats, you asked the question and might get your own video. If a bunch of big esports orgs got together and decided to make their own version of an already popular esports game, do you think they could actually steal viewers / players from the original? Yeah, I mean, I wish this would happen in fucking Counter-Strike, honestly. Like, I wish the orgs would buy the CSIP and use the pro players' feedback that are on these teams in order to make the best possible competitive game. That would be fucking cool.
This was actually going to happen in history. There would have been no CSGO. A lot of people don't know this story. Alex Garfield, when he started with EG wasn't the powerhouse it was that later, because that happened after the CGS period, when he then sort of overtook the complexities and 3Ds of the world and became the one NA team and then got the StarCraft players in and all the rest of it. Before that, Evil Geniuses was a largely Canadian / North American team who actually were always like a level below the complexities and the 3Ds and the top teams, right? And at this time, while basically CGS began and those brands went over, and Alex Garfield was still at 1.6, but he was also like working a little bit, I think, with like calling like CGS. He was like doing some sort of like mix of the two, right? And he was getting all the sponsors, like that famous story where he's in the dorm room and he's going with all the. And at the same time, people don't know this, he was the original guy, like Nicola Nyholm did with Gooseman in CSGO, who tried to get his own little fucking world. He wanted to be the demiurge of his own version of Counter-Strike Monty. And so what he did was he got a bunch of people who were making what was called CS Pro Mod. And what it was they'd made the engine of CS Source, which is the same engine, by the way, that actually Go's based on. They took the engine and they just tried to make everything look and feel like CS 1.6, which is the more loved version of the game. And by the way, they were doing it. I played one of the later versions. It was really close. It was which is super interesting because the CSGO devs claimed to some famous pros that it wasn't even their fault that like the spray was all like fucked up compared to 1.6. They claimed like actually when you coded it straight over, it just didn't work the same way, which actually it turns out a lie. So, but the problem they had was this, Monty, because this was like a side project. It was a small group of programmers, and I believe there was even some mad thing like right when they were about to get like the first proper version completed, like the programmers like mutinied and wanted some equity or something, and they like had to restart over again. The problem basically was they just dicked around for too many years, and they wasted like 3 or 4 years, and then CSGO just came out. And if they could have done this though, Monty, like a year or two before, there was a world where like in NA, because the CGS Counter-Strike had died off to some degree, you might have had a chance to maybe transition. Now, here's the thing, even back then, I never missed homie. I had the craziest radar for people back then because I was the only one, Monty, who had this take. Everyone else who was like the pros were like, well, if you play it, it is way better than Source. It is like 1.6. We should all switch. And I was like, are you out of your mind? You want, like I just said, the demiurge of your game. It's bad enough it's Valve, mate. They at least to stay out the game. You want Alex Garfield to be the god who owns the whole IP. I was looking around like, am I the only? Because this is before he got his bad rep, mate. But I always know behind the scenes. Like, I was just like, I would vote no to that. But I get the premise. Like, it is a good concept because basically, spoiler, this is like the conversation we've had many times. One day, maybe it'll be decades, maybe it'll be less if it scales up. The obvious battle that will have to happen in court is who really owns all of the IP rights. Because essentially, just like soccer, I think it's ridiculous that the person who made the ball can watch Messi play and go, I take credit for all that. Actually did. You didn't do any of that. Messi did all that with the ball. So in the same way, the idea like Faker doesn't have any ownership over like his shit. What? It's his performance that, well, like Faker. It's not your game. If I put your game and I throw in Golden Glue, no one watches, mate. If I throw in Faker, everyone watches. So it can't be your game. So one day, it either has to be like you're saying, they either have to beat the devs in court, so it'll have to be an enormous industry, or the other angle is it's the diabolical CS Pro Mod angle. You'll make your own game and then you'll take the money meant to that. Now, the problem I will say is this. The latter part sounds good until you realise there's a reason the game gets big and it's nearly always the player base on the casual level is enormous. That's what you're going to have a really hard time with if you're artificially built from the top down. How are you going to get millions of people to play, basically?
It also costs more than like Marvel movies to make a AAA title. Like it costs hundreds of millions of dollars to make these games. And so for teams to have the resources in order to do that and then hope that they can launch it, get a strong enough player base, turn it into esport. Now, this is the ideal way because we want the teams to actually own the league because otherwise it's just the developers in a perpetual conflict of interest doing their shitty marketing exercise while simultaneously telling the teams that they're going to pay them someday. I mean, the system's broken, but like you say, Thorin, it either is going to have to be some kind of insane fundamental change to IP law where, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from our industry. Like Congress could change IP law in a way that makes fair use different, which it is going to be a core problem, not just in esports, but across many industries, I think, moving forward in the digital era. So it's possible that we see some massive shift on that level that affects esports in a positive way. I don't think it's likely, but yeah, something's got to give at some point in time. And the only way to do it is for the law to change so that anybody can create their own esports league using that IP, in which case the teams could take it away from the developers, or we have to see the teams make a game. The storylines the casters were using during Cloud9 versus EG series were utter shit. The biggest narrative focus was on Scuttle Crabs. Did they even bring up Jensen versus JoJo, Vulcan versus C9, or Vulcan laning against Sven? I mean, that is a good one because Vulcan and Sven, I think, had some beef when they were on Cloud9 together. There were so many great narratives that were missed, so the casters could make shitty meme jokes about Blabber and Crabs. I didn't actually listen to the cast, so I don't know. But I didn't listen to the cast because
that is a general problem you notice in esports broadcasts, Monty. They can't avoid the low-hanging fruit. Like, here's the thing. If you think up a joke, but it instantly spawns and it's a really obvious one, then everyone else is thinking of it already, mate. Go to the next one. If you notice, even though sometimes I totally miss, when I come in with a mad angle, it's going to be a fucking mad angle. It's not going to be some obvious shit that you know. It's going to be some totally different take. So, yeah, I will say, like, that blabber scrap, that was 2 years ago. Yeah. Oh, that was actually last year, but even so, like, who gives a fuck? That was ages ago. You make it sound like you did it every game. You did it once, ever. Once.
Well, it's also like, I do agree with giving players like personalities and playing up on it, but I don't think that it hypes up your league for Blabber to be the crab throwing guy instead of any
it's also
of
like
the other
2-time
ways.
MVP. I know exactly. Yeah. You don't want him to suck. You want him to be awesome, surely.
Like, come up with a cool
Why
nickname
are you
for him. This goes back to the same shit that I've talked about a million times. One thing that Doa and I did was we learned from Brood War, where they would call, like, you know, the best Protoss players the Dragons, or the best players of all time the Bonjour, and they had, you know, nicknames for players, like Savior was the Maestro and everything like this. That's why we came
everyone
up with,
has a nickname.
Yeah, we came up with, like, that's why we came up with the Immortal Score, because we wanted to really impress in people's minds what these players' play style was and come up with these larger than life identities. Nobody ever fucking does that in LCS or LEC.
Well, the joke is they still to this day say Flame Horizon in the LCS. Yeah, they do. Yeah. They still do.
So that's a lot of these
narrative from 9 years ago.
That was very effective when I invented that term. I also don't get credit for that, but whatever.
No,
that's my word, but you know, that's my term. But a lot of this stuff, like, we made it larger than life, and that we learned how to do that from Brood War, and Brood War learned how to do that from professional wrestling. Like, it's not rocket science. It's not that we invented it. We just applied it to League of Legends. No, like, why doesn't, like, Caps has like Claps and Craps, which is kind of funny, but like, he doesn't have a nickname. No. It doesn't. It's wild to me that these players who are like Yankos, surely he should have something by now.
He used to have like the first Blood King, but the problem is the kind of play style changed since then, so it kind of just doesn't have one since.
Yeah. So too bad. Big missed opportunities. But they're really terrible at telling the story of their own league. So I guess it's not surprising. If EDG and LNG...
I'll tell you the craziest angle as well, because in the modern day they've gotten even worse, dude. Like, you know, in the modern day they make the narrative of the team the org's identity. So, you know, like FlyQuest, they're always like, it's a kind of a cool org. It's always promoting mental health awareness. What has that got to do with these 5 players? Same shit, by the way, 100 Thieves. It's kind of a hoodie org. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? It's the game. What? If you even bring up Nadeshot while telling me the story of these 5 players in League of Legends, you have failed instantly. Nadeshot is irrelevant to it. He's not even like Reggie, where he has direct input, for fuck's sake. He just pays their bills and goes. Well, the joke is he goes, "Oh, they're in the finals or something like." That's like sort of Nadeshot shit.
Nadeshot will care about the team for 1 match a year, and otherwise just be paying attention to Call of Duty and streaming. Which is why it's so funny when they started coming out, as soon as 100 Thieves started getting good, when Nadeshot was like, "Oh, I love League of Legends." I'm like, where the fuck were you for the last 2 years? And then they got very mad at me, which was funny also. If EDG and LNG both make it out of the LPL gauntlet, we perhaps have the sickest narrative ever. Scattered Exodia pieces of Griffin will assemble at Worlds. Guarantee you that Riot would definitely miss the narrative on that one.
Oh, they would.
Each in contention to being the best or one of the best in their roles. That said, is Sword the worst pro player of all time relative to their teammates' strength? Yeah, what happened to that guy? I mean, we did make the banger intro for Summoning Insight with the film noir with the suicide by Sword joke.
Well, he had that whole thing where he literally was in like, I think even like it wasn't he been involved in like a court case with CV Max or some shit where he was like arguing with that coach guy and then the DRX thing. Yeah. So there's all that. And then what happened, as far as I remember, was he stayed in Griffin, but all the good players started to leave, except like I think Viper or whatever was still there. And then they was shit and got relegated. And I think, unsurprisingly, no one picked him up. The problem that guy had was this: if you ever go back to when Griffin first came into the league, because at the time he just played like Sion, he actually could do a decent job at that. He could be like a weak side Sion. His problem was when you had to be like a fucking carry player, and obviously at that Worlds, that fucking season 9 Worlds, some of the most egregious drafting ever, where Trophy was on like the fucking like tank or Galio, and then this fucking comp was on like an Aatrox or something like that. Was driving me up the wall, mate. That was one of the maddest of all time. That was where they like didn't have a coach at Worlds or whatever. If you remember that story, like what the fuck? Wow. He's up there certainly, but I don't think he would win. Come on, there's got to be some way worse people. Like, I'll give you an example. That guy who played on top that one year, the fucking Yanjia guy or whatever, he was fucking trash. That support play with Jackie Dove, he was absurdly bad. I can't even believe they won the LPL with him. Like, so I think he's got to be up there on the fucking list, mate.
I don't actually think you even need LNG because Tarzan is like the least interesting narrative. I think just having EDG and Gen.G would be fucking amazing because you would reunite the bot lane on opposite sides, right? That to me is the more.
I mean, you get the added upside with LNG. You get Doinby though. You still got that. Not that it's relevant to this narrative, but it's a good narrative in itself, right?
Sure. Yeah, I just think that you can run with the narrative just with one of the teams, although it would be really fun to have both of the teams. Favorite esports commissioner ever and why? Well, it's myself, obviously, but it says present company excluded. I don't think I have
commissioners have they even beaten?
I mean, I guess the easy answer for me is Nate Nanzer from Overwatch League, who I actually thought was quite good, but was hamstrung by people above him who were terrible.
In that case, I can't answer. All I can answer is that John Spector is my worst esports commissioner of all time. So that's all I can say for certain. That's just my take. So that's all I can say.
I don't, knowing John, I think he suffered from the same problems that Nate did in many ways, except he was awkward in terms of his public communication in ways that he should not have been. But honestly, there haven't been that many because here's the thing. The corporate overlords of the publishers don't want some sort of all-powerful person deciding things because they have business interests that supersede fairness or any kind of rules. And there's always, it's not like the NFL where the American sports like the NBA where the commissioners report to the teams but are given broad autonomy in order to make those decisions. That was the case in my case because there was just the teams who owned the league, right? And Flashpoint, so they could actually invest somebody, in this case, me, with that level of control. But most of the time, there's always somebody higher up on the developer food chain to dictate a lot of this bullshit. So the commissioner is not as powerful as the name would suggest. If you had to divide your careers into BC and AD periods, what would be the point in time where the shift occurs and why?
I think mine's easy as fuck, surely.
When you became an on-camera personality?
No, like that's not a bad one, but I would say the obvious answer is it's called like Katowice. What was it, March 12th, fucking 2014, whatever it was. Because if people don't know, that's not like a story. I know I told it like a comic book origin story for a villain, but I genuinely sat in that hotel room in Katowice because unfortunately at the time, this was before I had money, before I made a lot of money. And by the way, ESL didn't pay a lot back then. And spoiler, they weren't going to pay me for this event. So when I was looking at flights to go home, you can imagine if you're booking a flight last minute, it's like not that many destinations going to, like, it was like fucking £700 for a flight. So I was like, fuck it, I might as well just wait 4 days and go home on my normal flight. So when I was just sat in a hotel room trying not to go outside and get beaten up by CS fans for 4 days, I remember just thinking, there's 2 ways you can go on this. Either all these people messaging you are right, your career's over, you're fucked, or you've got to find a way to actually embrace the fact that you will be disliked and say fuck it and succeed anyway. And I actually decided in that moment, again, you're going to think this is a comic book story. It's not. I did it. I decided in that moment I will become the #1 person in the entire world at analysis. Spoiler, that was going to be my second event ever as an analyst, by the way. And not only did I, but are you ready? In just over 2 years later, ESL themselves hired me for a major in their home country. Suck on that, haters. So there's my BC. So it's BK before Katowice, and after Katowice, so it's BK, you want it your way, and then afterwards it was AK. That's right, motherfucker. Yes, there you go. What was yours, Monty?
probably when I decided to stand up to Riot about all their bullshit publicly, because at that point in time, you know, it was very comfortable, obviously working in League of Legends, and I was at the very top of like the heap of casters, and I had to decide whether I wanted to do that or stand up for my actual fucking principles and try and make a massive positive difference in the industry. And that was going to send me into the realm of chaos where they, you know, MonteCristo can still cast our events. Obviously, I wasn't going to get hired. Like, that was just lies. I blacklisted. Like, clearly, they're not going to hire me.
When they said that, I know.
It's just like,
that's like almost as bad, mate. Where this is real. Where because on Reddit during the period I was like obviously like if verboten to be an ESL employee, right? When if anyone would ever write on Reddit, Thorin is banned from ESL events. Carmack is such a twat. He would come in the thread and reply, "This isn't true at all. He is welcome to attend our events if he wants to." Like as if like the idea was like I couldn't like pay to go. Like that's like that's almost as bad as that. Like that's like fuck you. That's so disingenuous an answer. I know.
So I mean, I and also was going to make it so that I had to develop other skills, which I did. I mean, I had other skills already because I have a good education and I have worked other professional jobs, but it required me to use them and be more savvy when it came to managing my career, learning more about the business aspect of esports, founding my own businesses, everything like that. So in the end, it made me a lot more self-sufficient and able to get a variety of jobs within this industry that I really enjoy and kind of run things my own way and be my own person. So, you know, I just didn't want to be Riot's bitch until the end of time, which apparently a lot of people do for whatever reason, while they quietly talk to me about how much it sucks behind the scenes, but they never want to take the actual leap and try to put themselves first, rely on their own skills, and jump off the deep end.
Oh, Monty, I'm sure you've every now and then, in the wrong or the right moment, thought about this. You know, people bill us as these, literally, not even just like they don't like us, they bill us as fundamentally flawed, bad human beings who have no. But here's the thing, Monty, all I have to say is this. If we were the people you guys claim we were, all we would have to do is open up those motherfucking silos of DMs, and you don't even know the shitstorm me, Richard, and Monty here could rain down on this industry. Like, put it this way, just my DMs with some of the people who claim to hate me, but were like former friends of mine, would blow everyone's fucking minds. I have it all, motherfuckers. But the difference is, the joke is, even though you guys buy into it, like, yeah, they are bad guys, they're all right and fucking it. We're not. The joke is we're some of the only people with the integrity not to reveal all that shit. Even when the twat that you have in your DMs, the one coming against you in public. Oh, it's so tempting. Except the problem is, like, I always say this, you don't want to win that way because you just become them at that point. You just become, it's worthless, and it's like if you had to become a murderer to win, is it worth it? No.
Let me put it this way. I possess documents from my time as a team owner in the LCS that if I were to release them would burn the LCS to the ground tomorrow. The problem is that if I do that, then a lot of innocent people will be caught in very bad situations, and I'm not going to do that. So it's not going to happen. But it's not like I don't have the ammo. I'm just not going to use it. Do either of you believe in anything considered supernatural? So my spiritual beliefs, I'm an atheist, number one. So I guess the quick answer is no. The complex answer is that I believe in the infinite power and unknowable nature of my own mind, in which case I can suspend my disbelief in the supernatural and dabble in believing in the supernatural in the moment and create those kind of experiences without technically believing that they're real. As long as they're real within my mind and my own personal experience, that is what matters. So I believe in the power of the unconscious, and I think that ritual is extremely important at a fundamental psychological level, and that it has been created in every human society independently and serves a vital function for mental health. But I don't logically believe in the supernatural.
Just on the basis of my own personal experiences with psychedelics, lucid dreams, certain other techniques, I would say I have subjective belief that these things exist. The thing is, though, I don't know if they would to other people or if the same thing would happen if they did it. So in a way I do, in a way I don't. And also part of me thinks Essentially, part of me thinks that, like, in some way, I actually do sort of think the human mind might actually generate some element of reality. So the reason I bring that up is it's because it's the ultimate get out, which is essentially if the human mind in some sense generates reality, not just your experience, but like actually some element of the fabric of reality, then logically, if the rest of the world was convinced to be atheist, then a lot of this shit wouldn't work. So logically, that's why it doesn't work. But if they thought differently, there we go. That's a hell of a breadcrumb for you.
I think it's very complicated because like I've talked about like doing this, you know, adulthood initiation, and like I am extremely good at suspending my disbelief and enacting, you know, being in ritual environments.
About all those KT roster predictions.
Yeah, exactly. I'm extremely good at it.
Just like me with Rogue, exactly.
So I can put myself into a state where I can believe in the supernatural in the moment, but when I take a step back from it and I'm not engaged, then I do not, logically, if that makes sense to you. I do think that people are fools, though, for being atheists and denying the fundamental power of ritual and religion and not engaging with it at all, because you are basically just ignoring a vital part of what it means to be human. That's what I think.
I also think in general, there's a massive misunderstanding of the difference between can you prove how something works and is that having an effect?
Yes.
People conflate the two and think unless you can prove how it does it. So I think there's, put it this way, essentially what I'm implying is there's a lot more mystery as far as I can tell in the world than anyone's nailed down.
Yeah. And like sometimes you are not a logical being as a human, and you're look, there have been infinity studies that show that people make emotional decisions before logical ones, and you, as much as you might think you're logical, you're the same way. So a lot of the time, the best way to change yourself is through illogical means or ancient like ritualistic techniques, or, you know, frankly, psychedelics. Than it is to you can't just tell yourself that you should do something logically. You have to break a pattern of behavior, and that is going to be a fundamentally illogical process. What would be the worst set of guests Doublelift could try to host on his show?
Oh, that'd be easy because I can tell you. Like, here's the problem.
I mean, you
we'll have to pick.
Be one of them because
because here's the thing. I would in a sense, but also at the same time, depending on what the scenario.
It would
like
be very entertaining.
If he understood it was a show and it was like we were sort of WWE, that'd be the best show ever. No, the problem with this one is obviously I don't want to pick people that like for no reason would dissing them. So the real issue with this question is if it wouldn't hurt the feelings of the people I would say the names of, I could tell you because it's all the people I've invited on my shows who were just death. You bring them on, they have no take, no answer. It's a 2-word answer. It's some boring, like just like monotone voice. There's been people we've had as guests before. Spoiler, they're the ones where I just go ham basically to make up for it. But like, if you had those people on Doublelift's show, holy shit, he wouldn't be able to handle it. Like, he doesn't have the gear. He could shift away. He could just entertain. Like, I think basically the show would just die on its arse. So essentially, just think of the most boring player you've seen on a talk show. Put 2 of those with Doublelift. I think it would be death. Because at the moment, everyone praises this, but it is the obvious angle, right? The real reason the show's interesting is because actually Lena is getting the biggest names possible to come on with Doublelift. If he even just had one guest, by the way, if he had just Joe Marsh, it would have been bad. The point of that one, he had Joe Marsh and he had Steve, and then he had Carlos, and like that mixed together was already going to be interesting. So I think actually that show in general, it wouldn't have to be as bad even as I'm thinking of. Like, if you just put on some average guests, I think it wouldn't be that great either too. I think you have to have the absolute biggest names to make it like an appeal.
Yeah, and the problem with that show is that eventually he's going to get too bored to keep doing it, and he's going to run out of guests at some point in time, and then he's going to have to be the one who's interesting, and that is actually impossible. So we'll just wait for the slow death of that one. Just wait for the slow death. How do you like your coffee? Black. That's it. I just like it black. No sugar, no milk, nothing. I drink quite a bit of black coffee. I typically, that's what I wake up, drink a couple cups of black coffee, don't eat until I haven't, don't eat till 1 usually.
I don't ever drink coffee. I hate coffee. The only time I would ever even drink it as a kid is like if the only options were coffee and tea and I had access to unlimited sugar. So really, with enough milk and sugar, you're not even drinking coffee at that point in time. I am drinking a milkshake. So in the modern day, I only drink Gamer Subs, of course. Code Thorin, THORIN, 10% off of GamerSubs.gg.
There you go. This is not a sponsor, but I have.
It is my sponsor though. So.
No. What I'm about to say, it is your sponsor.
All right, okay.
What I'm about to say, sorry. The thing I am about to say is not a sponsor of me, but I I do use this site drinktrade.com, which is a coffee subscription. So I get different roasts from all around the country shipped to me. I like that. I enjoy nice coffee.
Oh, like Twitter?
Yeah. Except I pay for this.
All right, there you go. Exactly. Yes.
This question is partly due to the torrential downpour of Super Team Whiplash this year. It is also somewhat slept on in League, but Thorin talks a lot about it in CSGO. Can you touch on the topic of cores within Western League? Any angle is fine. Below is a list of the more prolific ones over the last 5 years. Wonder Yanko's Perks, obviously, for G2, Mad Lions, Humanoid, Karzi, and Kaiser. Team Liquid, Impact, Smithy, and Doublelift. Yeah. 20, and then Closer, FBI, and Huhi. The idea of cores. The thing is, most cores in League don't actually stay together for very long at a time. And if they do, it's typically only 2 players, not 3. I think those are some good examples of core rosters.
One of the points when he alluded to I say it in CSGO is because I also came up with like what I think is a progression on this topic. The problem we had in CSGO was this, Monty. Essentially, any 3 players from a great lineup that stay together or play together in a future team, people just started calling the core. So famously, for example, the Astralis core, I mean, that was actually, it was obviously Divides, Dupree, and Zipnix, right? The problem I have with that approach is this. If you make it that like, so when they were in TSM, they were like this. Then when they were in the Astralis, they were like this. It's like, what you're missing there is this though. Those are core in the sense that those were the remaining players. But the core, in my opinion, should be the players that most informed the playing style of the team. Yeah. So as a result, I'll give you a weird example. The one that made me realize this was actually the Brazilians, because Fur, Fallen, and Cold Zero played together for way longer than when they had Taco, right? But I actually think if you made the core, it would include Taco. Because if you don't know, Taco and Cold Zero was like the combo that made Cold Zero the best. Then Taco was like the support player, so it helped with the structure. So the point is, actually, when you remove Taco, who was technically the worst player, there wasn't a core. Like, they weren't the same team fundamentally, and they weren't anywhere as close to as good. So on that level, the difference is, I do think sometimes people are just taking it like I'll give you an example. In Astralis, they have the old Splice core. They've got Vizicachi, Surtse, and Kobe. Problem is, you got a fucking humanoid, do you? That's a pretty big part. It was pretty good, wasn't he, that humanoid guy? Like, so you know what I mean? So the problem with them is, like, I think sometimes people are just noticing a pattern that's not actually essentially meaningful. But when they are meaningful, so for example, the classic ones of like, you could obviously go with like Faker, Bang, and Wolf's a pretty good one, right? You have a stable bot lane, you have the mid lane that can play out, carry or move around the map. Like, that's not a bad one.
In League, I would say it's much more common to have the 2-man core that informs playstyle. Like Faker Bengi was the definition of T1's playstyle for many years. Here's another one, Showmaker and Canyon. Like we saw the, Nuguri, then Khan, and now Nuguri again, and Birdall. But really the core of that playstyle is based around Showmaker being a more mobile, supportive mid laner and Canyon being a carry jungler, right? Like, and it was kind of the reverse of that, like Bengi enabling Faker's carry potential and pressure. So I think that is mostly what I would probably consider like a true core roster.
Like you said, though, the real problem is this. You really can in CS have those guys stay together 3, 4, 5 years if they want. That happens. That never happens in League of Legends generally.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue like the IG rookie, the shy combination of like the dominant solo lanes. What else?
Becky Soaz is a classic.
Yep. Okay,
because if you have those 2 players, you have the most unique solo lane combo you can imagine in the West, obviously.
Sure. But most League teams have not stayed together for extended periods of time, or at least seen success, like extended periods of success. We'll go to the next one. Considering only countries you have never been to, which one would you choose to live in for 6 months?
I feel like the answer, here's the thing, the obvious one to me would probably be somewhere in Southeast Asia, one
Vietnam,
of those ones where
would be one of them.
One of it like could be Thailand, Philippines, just somewhere that's really cheap. You can live like a king, still probably get half decent internet, still do most of the things you want, save all the money, probably have fuck all income tax. There's a lot of good reasons.
Look, I have tons. I love traveling, and I travel
Food will be good.
I've lived in, I've been to many like first world countries, third world countries, etc. If I've never countries, I would also consider living in many countries I've never been to for 6 months, considering that I have spent my life moving to countries I have never been to. I moved to Korea without ever having been to Korea. I moved to Ireland without ever having been to Ireland. So I'm kind of, this ain't my first fucking rodeo. You know what I mean? So I haven't been to Vietnam. I would certainly live in Vietnam for 6 months. Like you say, Thorin, I would live in the Philippines. I would live in New Zealand. What other places would I want to go?
Definitely going nowhere near New Zealand and Australia after what happened the last couple of years, personally. But that's just me. That's just me on that one, boys.
Well, yeah, we'll wait for it to calm down a little bit.
By the way, I've actually been to Vietnam. It's one of the few ones I've been there. Here's the thing I'll tell you. This is how I'd sell it, right? When the sun rises at like 6 in the morning or whatever the fuck, mate. When I saw the sunrise over a clear sky in Vietnam, Monty, I actually realized most of those Hollywood movies, I was overrating the cinematographer. I thought he was doing that with lenses. It's actually just unbelievable, mate. Yeah. It's like a giant, massive sun just coming up. What the fuck? Like, you think you're in like a fucking LSD trip or something, mate. So I was thinking like, mate, I thought all those 8 Vietnam movies were just like God-tier filmmakers. Just that's what it looks like for real.
I've been to Thailand. I've been to Cambodia, but I haven't been to Vietnam. I would live in Russia, probably. Not a big fan of the government, but definitely I could see myself for 6 months in St. Petersburg, going through the architecture and museums. Or Moscow. I would really enjoy that.
You know something wild? When I was in St. Petersburg this year, I actually was there, believe it or not, in February, right before the war. I got there like 2 weeks before. When I was there, I actually found some amazing Korean barbecues. They had like a bunch of Korean expats that were really good. Yeah. Put it this way, the Korean barbecue in St. Petersburg was way better than like Germany, all those countries.
There are a bunch of Koreans in Vladivostok and like the eastern parts of Russia. So I'm sure some of them made it, over into the big part too. I would live in many places in Eastern Europe. Like I've never been to Romania. I could see myself spending 6 months there. I could live in Slovenia for 6 months. I've been to Croatia, but not Slovenia.
The good ones are stuff like Estonia, because you have to realize the reason that's actually a hack. The downside is you're next to Russia. That could cause problems. The upside is this:
you're only there for 6 months.
The internet's really good, and that's one of those countries where they purposely make the gimmick that the income tax is absurdly low. So here's the difference, Monty. A fan doesn't realize this, and I'm not going to go into too much because it'll give away how much we make. But spoiler, if you make the income tax like 10% instead of 40%, that's like I'm just paying myself fucking a year's salary, like almost. Like that's a pretty good deal. That's a pretty good deal, boys.
So a lot of places in Europe that I haven't been to, especially Eastern Europe, would be pretty good. I think I've been to most of the places in Africa that I would want to live, or like could see myself spending 6 months. Maybe Rwanda. I could probably go there for 6 months. I haven't been there. There's some interesting stuff I'd like to do there. Where else? South America. Definitely like Peru, Argentina. I could see myself in Buenos Aires for a while. I could see myself in Lima's food scene is fucking banging right now, and I'd love to spend 6 months there. First off, go do some ayahuasca. Sounds great. Second off, go see all the ruins there. Like, that would be really fun. Costa Rica, Panama, could easily see myself being there for a while. Uruguay, could see myself being there for a while. I mean, I would live almost anywhere. So, I mean, there's just too many places that I haven't been to that I would definitely pack a suitcase and go to for 6 months. Given the choice between immediate failure and delicious razor cake of almost not failing, which makes you feel worse? I would rather just fail immediately so my delusions were shattered.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because here's the thing. I actually think the most unfair part about the latter is everyone just retcons it the second the result comes out. So here's the joke, Monty. If Mad Lions really did actually just complete that fucking series and win, we'd have been morons for picking Rogue. But because they didn't, now magically it's okay that we picked Rogue. Like, that's just stupid. Like, that can't be how the world works. So, yeah, the worst is when the Razor Cake team loses, everyone pretends they never had a chance to win, you moron. It's like, the whole point is they had all the chances and it just happened in a way you couldn't predict, isn't it, you idiots? So, like, I'll definitely pick the former. Just fail immediately, then who cares?
Hardest accent to understand. This might be a crazy one, but I actually think sometimes it's harder to understand people with really terrible, who are native English speakers with really horrible accents, because you expect to understand them, but then you can only understand like 50% of what they say. As an American, when I would go out to the deep west of Ireland, I literally could understand like 50% of what those people were fucking saying to me, even though we ostensibly were talking the same language, which made it much more infuriating. So
it's
like
famous that even like Irish people from like Dublin would tell you the same thing though.
No,
but
yeah,
like they
you
might
can't
not. Yeah,
understand. You can't
exactly.
fucking understand them.
It's
So,
not
like,
Monty being an idiot. It's just people that different. Yeah, exactly.
Like, 'cause they also use different lingo, and like, so I would literally encounter people like in farmland in Western Ireland, and they would talk to me. I'd be like, I have no fucking.
But it is
clue what you're
weird.
trying to say to
A
me
similar
right now.
answer would definitely be like Northern Scotland, for example,
Yes,
because basically it's the
exactly.
same problem. You already have like a harsh accent, but then as you say, the worst thing's going to be when you go to a small localized area, you're never even going to get the slang. Forget the accent.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, and if you don't know, I've always thought the real reason English is hard has nothing to do with the language. It's that if you go to England, everyone speaks in idioms all the time.
Yes.
Well, if you don't know the idiom, like imagine being a guy from like Ethiopia, so one bird in the hand is better than like, you know, what the fuck does that even mean? Like there's no point translating it. You just have to know what it means, don't you? So that's half the problem in the native speakers. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, that's actually for me, that's the hardest to understand because I feel like I should. Most people who have thick accents are going to speak in a way that's very simple, so I don't find it very difficult.
I'll tell you a random one. I only watched like 2 episodes. I thought it was shit. That fucking Netflix drama everyone was raving about called Inventing Anna. Whatever the fuck accent she was trying to do was like give me like ear cancer or something. It's really bad, mate. If you look at it, it's almost like she's trying to do some sort of fucked up like Atlanticist accent or something. It just sounds so weird. It sounds like someone who's having like a stroke or something, mate.
Funniest esports player / team quote you remember? Mine is Locodoco's feelings towards J-Dong. That was funny when he asked to do cocaine off of J-Dong's erect penis, which is just hilarious. I mean, I love Forgiven's quote on this show, which is you could either be the best or suck a cock. And speaking of hard access to understand, Greek is mega hard. And that was even funnier.
It's why I always big up Troublelink, because you can hear she's definitely got this. I mean, she said she lived in the UK or something. Like hers is way more understandable than Forgiven's, way more. So if you listen to comp Forgiven and her, she's easily the best out of the 3 to listen to. No, let me think. So here's the thing. I actually think Richard had a banger quote years ago. I won't say who it was about, but it was the perfect way, and I know he's used it many, many times. His quote goes like this: when someone in the industry is basically just an irredeemable twat, what you say is this: his crime is being himself, and that is also his punishment. So what a fucking great line it is, isn't it? Straight fire.
I also enjoyed the classic cyanide quote, as useless as nipples on a man. That's a pretty great all-time League of Legends quote.
That's not culturally aged so well, but that's more politics, you know.
Pro players can sometimes be particularly hard-headed with implementing new concepts into their play. What is one common mistake you see pro players constantly do that you think could have the best chance of coaching out of a player? Look, I don't really understand, especially in the West. Like, my biggest pet peeve is that the one thing that pro players have no excuse over is just being good at macro, because it just requires decision making within the game that has nothing to do with necessarily your practice environment. So what I don't understand is why they can't identify win conditions of team compositions and then execute on them. If anything, like, I would get if you get dominated in lane because you have stiffer competition in solo queue in Asia, but there's no excuse for like being bad at vision. Like, that just is just so confusing to me.
Dude, I'll give you an example of the sort of, it wasn't about vision, but a sort of team you're talking about. Misfits. Dude, they drafted all these scaling comps and then they just perma-fought all game long even when they were ahead.
Yeah.
What? Like that's like exactly what you're talking about. That's like the coaching stuff. It's like, here you go. Now, if you just do it right, so if I had to say in general, because if you notice on the watch parties, I have loads of these I've noticed. My number one, though, because I'll never get over it, is teams that are in the lead. They have control of the objectives in the map. They maybe even have the scaling comp, and they only are hitting the Baron to bait a team fight. But then once the Baron hits 2k health, they must continue and complete it. That is so, I can't believe I've been watching 10 years of this. Like, I can't believe that the teams never disengage. Like it's like the joke is there's a certain point at which like time must just change how fast the dilation of it, like their brain. It's crazy. They can't. It's like a moth to a flame. They cannot stop hitting that Baron. It's crazy, mate.
Really just has to be that they're not like sitting down and doing very, very specific sessions around concepts, and like they're really just going by the seat of their pants every fucking game. Like, I think you just have to have like macro seminars or something. So I would hope that would be possible to coach out of people eventually.
I feel like it should be. Yeah, fundamentally, it feels like it should be.
What is your favorite and least favorite trophy in any sport? I think my favorite is probably the Stanley Cup, just because of the history at this point in time, where you have 100 years of people's names, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And also, what they let all the players like have their day with the Stanley Cup and beat the shit out of it. And every offseason, they have to like hammer it back into the proper shape. Like, it's great. It's a great tradition. I don't know if I have a least favorite. There are a bunch of bad ones. Like.
Let me have a look. Yeah, favorite's hard, because here's the thing: if you're having a cup, I just prefer it to be like a simple one. Like, for example, I think like the Wimbledon trophy's a pretty good banger. It's just a golden cup, but just like, it's not too ornate, but it's like, it is ornate. It's quite well done. It's like what you dream of winning if you dream of winning a big competition or something. I don't know about least favorite would actually be in esports. Let me double check, because there's a Counter-Strike one that I think is utterly fucking atrocious. Let me see if I can find what this looks like. Because there's this one that they did, the ESL did. I'm going to find it for you, mate. It's so insanely bad. Like, let me see. I've got a couple for you here. Let's see if this is right. Right, one is, if you just look up, put like ESL Pro League Season 8 CSGO. Look at this trophy, Monty. It looks like something someone in Metalworks made that's just shit. It's so whack, you're not even going to believe it, mate. You are not going to believe how bad it is.
Okay, I'm Googling it.
Doesn't that blow your fucking mind? And that was their flagship product, homie. Pro League.
It's like
it's mental, innit?
Square.
I wasn't overrating exactly. It's mental how bad it is. You see what I mean? Like, it's like a bad like metalwork project that your kid brings home or something. It's mental, innit?
This looks like something that would be a trophy for like a racing competition in Mad Max, because they can't make anything else. Yikes.
Mad, isn't it? It's mad.
I think that wins. Holy shit.
It's crazy, isn't it? I know. By the way, my favorite esports one was an ESL one, though. Sadly, it doesn't exist because they got rid of the ESL one brand. It was the ESL one trophy. Like, you look at the Cologne one, it's that giant cylinder. It's a really good one, man. That looks fire. That looks really sick, I think. ESL one Cologne trophy or whatever. Look it up, guys. Mega.
If you could go back in time and perform Inception on any player who has now washed out of the scene in order to save their pro careers, who would you choose? Like Apto, Forgiven, Dardoch. I'd pick Savior. He was my favorite Brood War player. Didn't have to, go to jail for match fixing. That would have been a cool one, I think. If I had to pick a League player, I guess it'd probably be Apto, because I feel like we got robbed of years of potential rivalry and storytelling.
Problem with him, obviously, was that it was almost like, the joke is he would have gotten banned somewhere or another anyway. He just had like a really like rebel philosophy, didn't he? Like, he obviously didn't fuck with the process. In many ways, that's why it was kind of cool he went to China briefly. He was kind of like a very unusual Korean, if people don't know. They tend to heavily want consensus and to be liked and do the things. So that was why he's a really unusual guy. I'm trying to think who I would pick for this. Like, who would I want to like change the whole career of? If I had to say it, the real answer would probably be, I want to pick, like I'll give you an example. Like in StarCraft 2, there was that guy Sue who was in like 5 GSL finals and won 0. But the joke was, me and Suchi even used to say this, the line we had for that guy was, he is the best player in the world every day except the GSL final. Well, as a result, I'd like to go back in time and just make him win one of them, or help get him the mental coaching early on or something, whatever it would be. Because I always feel like those are the players. It's why I'm a big fan of Carrigan, who only just finally won the major this year, etc. I've always thought the most compelling story in esports is the person who could be the greatest, but something just stops them when they're in like the big moment, because it's clearly not about skill, is it? So any of those players I've always found like super compelling. So I'd love to help any of those guys turn it around.
Esports dēlenda est. Is this a personal attack on Thorin, since he, of course, is esports? Actually, it's funny. So for those of you who don't know, Esports dēlenda est is how we end the 4 horsemen, which comes from the famous quote about Carthage dēlenda est. So basically, Carthage must be destroyed. And so we also say at the end, esports must be destroyed. And that's just funny. That's funny. That's it. It's not intended to be that way. But for those of you who don't know the origination of that, Cato, in the Punic Wars, which were the wars between Carthage and Rome, he used to, regardless of the topic that was in the Senate and all of his speeches with Carthago dēlenda est, which means and therefore Carthage must be destroyed because they were Rome's enemy. So it just became a meme in ancient Rome where he would go up, give his speech, and just as a complete non sequitur, end every speech with that.
It's like his version of like thanks Obama or whatever, you know, like that one back exactly. Yeah.
But then they did destroy Carthage, so eventually it came true. But hopefully you will not be destroyed. For how long do you wager Team Liquid can keep spending so much across rosters in CS:GO and LoL? So here's the thing about Team Liquid. Team Liquid has a very good sales team, and Team Liquid also did some very smart things, which is many esports teams will try and lock in like 2 or 3 year long deals and try and renegotiate at the end of that period. Team Liquid has locked in very large deals for like a decade. So they are actually more immune to the recession that is likely to be coming. Well, is coming, just how big it is, right? Or how long it is. So I think they can actually keep up this spending relatively well. But the difference is I don't think they'll have to, because a bunch of other teams are going to be spending a lot less, which means they can also spend less because they'll have less competition. So I don't think they will, but I think that's a choice that they can make because they have a lot of really good established partners.
Yeah, the first thing I would say with that is, one, as Monty said on past episodes, if you just look what's going to happen to the league, generally it looks like the salaries will just go down as a tide. Like there will just be less. And so as a result, they themselves at the top end won't have to pay as much either if there's not that many people offering the millions of dollars. Then the other thing I would say is I would have agreed with the premise of the question if this was like 4 or 5 years ago when they first started spending big. Because at that time, the actual thinking in the industry was they're gambling, because what they're doing is they've sold all their VC early. They've sold all the equity, as it were. Meanwhile, you know, the TSMs and Cloud9s were sort of like in and out, like waiting for the right moment. So the perception was they're going to get their spend up front, but the other ones will get it on the back end. Well, that's the thing. As Monty says, they've done a banging job fucking maintaining these teams, selling sponsorships, getting partnerships. Because TL, as far as I can tell, that bit, if that's the case, then they've been able to sell fucking money for old rope whenever they want it. Like, these are the guys who can re-up anytime they want, it seems. So I wouldn't put it past them to be able to keep going as long as they want, mate. They seem like they're killing it.
Yeah, and also they're really well diversified across a variety of games. They've won, you know, a bunch of obviously LCS titles. They've won TI, right? Yep. They've been a champion in many different
Grand Slam in CS:GO.
Grand Slam in CS:GO. Yeah, I mean they've been really good for a long time, and because they touch on so many aspects of the market, both in North America and Europe. I mean their Alienware deal with which is Dell. And they've had that deal for forever. You know, they have big partnerships with companies like Verizon, Honda, Coinbase now. Monster's a sponsor they've had forever, right? They've just been a good partner, and like they're very well respected. Their sales team is very well respected in the industry, and they're kind of seen as the model for partner relations. So when you're good at that, and you have the really big breadth of titles to back you up. They also, I mean, you may not know this, but they also have presence in many different countries. Like obviously they have the North American and European presence within their titles, but you know, they have presence in Brazil, for example. That's where their Rainbow Six team is located. So they really do have like global reach, which allows them to sell to big global brands. So yeah, they've done a very good job. Very good team. Very good team. So yeah, that's it. That was the last question. We'll see you guys next week. Once again, same time, same channel. You know how to get here. Subscribe, please. Goodbye.